So we open the meeting at 6:03. All trustees present. First item on the agenda, public comment. Okay, nobody sign up. Next, we'll go to the workshop session, Team of 8 training. Our trainer is Scott Moore. I'm going to have a little bit of an intro for Scott. I actually met Scott at our leadership task class. He's actually one of my classmates. So we started talking about our districts, and I said, maybe this is a person that could come and help us with some of the challenges that we were having. You know, we have a very divided community. I would call this is a very divided board. And I didn't want to have a training where, you know, somebody stands up and starts looking at slide after slide after slide. I really wanted to have more of a conversation about the issues that we're having, and that's why Scott is here. So Scott Moore is a leadership consultant with Vision Bridge Consulting. He's a 2-term trustee at Conroe Independent School District, the 10th largest district in the state. He currently serves as the first vice president. Mr. Moore is also on the board of directors for the Texas Association of School Boards. Scott is a DP presenter at TASB Summer Leadership Institute, Winter Governance Camp, and the TASB Convention, where he has presented on transformational leadership for trustees and administrators, superintendent evaluation procedures, board community relations, and team dysfunction. He is scheduled to present a governance camp in March with Dr. Audrey Young from the State Board of Education on the science and psychology of human behavior in leadership situations. One of the things that attract me about Scott is the fact that he's completing his PhD dissertation at Our Lady of the Lake University on the relationship between school board transformational leadership practices and classroom teacher organizational commitment. Mr. Moore is a TEA registered provider and travels the state working with school boards and administrators. So Scott, he's going to be first kind of telling us how we're going to be handling these two sessions, what we're going to include in session 1 and session 2. So I'll let you, Scott, take over.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the invitation. It's good to be with y'all. Not a whole lot additional to what Jorge said, but just kind of expand a little bit on my PhD dissertation. What we'll be getting in the next, in a little bit tonight and much more so in the next time, is the results of some of my research on that. And what I'm researching is, does the way that we lead in the boardroom affect classroom teachers? There's research about board superintendent relationships. There's research about superintendent principal, principal teacher, teacher student. There's no research that ties the board to the classroom teacher. And with changes that have come about in the last few legislative sessions that have sort of increase the legal onus upon school boards for student outcomes. The direct tie to how our students function is that classroom teacher. So my research focuses on specific practices, specific leadership practices, and how that translates across multiple levels of the organization into the classroom. So you'll be getting a little bit of that as we go through this. What we're going to do tonight, it's going to be more of just a guided, facilitated discussion, a lot of question and answer and a lot of open discussion. And I know that we're videotaping tonight. Doesn't bother me a bit. There's going to be times where I'm just going to have real talk with you. I don't care who views a video of what I say. I don't have to live in the community. But I hope that y'all will take the opportunity to kind of let the guard down a little bit and be open and honest with one another. This is Team of 8 training, and if all 8 don't participate, then it's not a Team of 8 training. It's only a Team of 5, a Team of 6. And I say that, and this is not to chastise or anything. I sent out a needs assessment, and I got back 6 of the 8. And I don't know who's who. I know Jorge, I know Becky, I know Louis through a mutual friend. The rest of you, I don't know. So I have no idea which faces go with the people that I spoke with. Does that make sense? And the ones that I did speak with, I told them, everything I was recording was confidential. As I was writing down and taking notes during the conversation, I was not keeping track of who I was talking to. So when I go back to my notes, I don't know which person told me that. I was just taking those notes down. So whichever two I didn't get back, I hope you've had a chance to look at them and at least think about the answers. And we're going to go through them and talk about them tonight. And I hope that all 8 will participate in this. Normally when I do a team of 8, it is a little bit about what Jorge described. I've got a slide presentation, and there's certain things that TEA says we need to cover, and we need to talk about roles and duties of a trustee and a superintendent and all that kind of stuff. We're going to weave all of that in here without y'all having a classroom discussion and a bunch of slides up there. This is much more a discussion, an open discussion about how you as a team of 8, as the elected and their one hired employee to lead the district, how you work cohesively for the betterment of the students and the stakeholders of Grapevine Colleyville ISD. I am not here to make any judgments, to do any finger pointing and say, you should have done this better, you shouldn't have done that. That's not at all what this is about. This is about trying to get everybody rowing in the same direction for Grapevine Colleyville ISD. And in some of the conversations that I had over the last couple of weeks, I think that there's a feeling amongst some that maybe not everybody is rowing in the same direction. So we just want to try to get everybody. We can have disagreements, we can have different viewpoints about what ought to be taught, what not, what shouldn't be taught, whatever things that we all have these opinions about. But at the end of the day, all 8 of us should be focused on what is best for the students of Grapevine Colleyville ISD so that they can become the most productive citizens in whatever their post ISD education leads to, right? Whether that's college, career, military, whatever. So I want to just start off with this quick question that is from the slide. Does anybody know how many duties are legislatively mandated to a board of trustees? I got 3.
3. They just redid the frameworks.
Right.
It's kind of
Right. I'm talking about in the education code. If you were to go and read Texas Education Code, how many duties does a trustee have or a board of trustees have?
3. It's 3, I think.
3.
That's mine.
Did you finally?
That's my final.
Can we
I'm gonna say
find-
1.
So if you go on the TASB website and look it up, they're going to tell you 5. Okay? Texas Education Code actually spells out 27 things that a board of trustees is responsible for.
Wow.
Now, some of those 27 are very closely related. Some of those 27 involve coordinated effort with the superintendent. The superintendent is supposed to help develop and present a budget, and the trustees are supposed to approve that budget. It's not your job as trustees to be in the weeds figuring out to the dollar how much money CTE gets. That's why you hire a superintendent. He or she brings that information to you and you approve that budget, but it's his job to work with the staff to set that budget. So there's some overlap in some of the duties, and some of those 27 say, in coordination with the superintendent, you do X, Y, Z. You can distill them down to 5. And I'm not gonna go through all the 27. I can send you all a copy of this slide deck if you want. The 5 duties are adopt goals and priorities and monitor their success. Adopt policies and review those policies for effectiveness. Hire and evaluate the superintendent. Adopt a budget and set a tax rate. And communicate with the community / advocate for your district and public schools.
That's a new one.
That's the TASB 5-level version. I don't work for TASB.
Yeah.
But really, if you looked at those 27, they could all be categorized under one of those 5. So it sounds like a lot when you're guessing 3 and you're like, whoa, 27. Really 5 things you need to worry about: goals and priorities for the district, policies and effectiveness of those policies, hire and evaluate the superintendent, budget and tax, and communicate with your community. The other thing is that a board should reflect the community and its standards. And it's my understanding in a lot of conversation and some of the research I do, and I'm sure it's probably skewed one way or another, I think the Grapevine Colleyville community right now, the whole community, I'm not talking board specific, I think the community is developing a reputation as a polarized community. That's happening nationwide. I'll tell you, I'm a trustee in Conroe, we have the same thing, right? And things seem to be getting more and more polarized in the community. And if the board is supposed to reflect the community, you can expect a little bit of that polarization to be in here, because you should have people with different viewpoints representing the broadest spectrum of the community that you can. Are y'all at-large districts or single member?
At-large.
Everybody's at-large, okay.
We have places.
Right,
So,
right.
well, because it's not like Audrey's seat, right? Where
Right.
it's just the top 3 voters, but they're the top voters, but
Right.
so we have to pick a specific place.
Right, that's how we are in Conroe, everybody's at large. Some people have single member districts so that
Like Tyler.
there's
Yeah.
geographic representation. Because sometimes what you end up with is a board geographically or socioeconomically or whatever divider you want to put in there that's skewed one way or another. I have no idea if that's the case with this board, but looking around the boardroom, I can see that your board doesn't necessarily reflect the same demographics of the district, right? Which is definitely the case in Conroe. So you have to figure out, as a team of 8, who are supposed to be somewhat diverse and represent the community, how you come together and unify for the good of a community that itself is polarized, right? So that's what we're gonna try to do with this guided conversation, is sort of maybe get to the root of some of that polarization that some people in the community and on the board and in the district have been feeling, and see how we can use everybody's strengths to get everybody at least rowing in the same direction, okay? And again, this is not a presentation with me just, lecturing and throwing information at you. So if you have something to add, if you have a question, if you have a comment, jump right in.
Well, I'll say that I think Louis and I were correct with it, that it's 3, because adopt goals and policies is actually 1. Right, Louis?
That's right. I agree.
Phone a friend was correct.
So
I agree.
I would combine them.
now, I will say, from
Because I always have
looking
three. Hire, fire superintendent,
Adopt
policy,
goals
and pass a
Just
budget.
hire.
Yeah.
Louis, just hire.
Oh,
Hire and supervise.
So I will say that one of the things that I think you definitely have going in your favor to help with this, and it's actually something you've already been doing, and not everybody mentioned this, so I had gone through several conversations before I actually saw this in an answer, but how you're tying your LEAD 2.0 goals to every agenda item. And how, if it's on the agenda, it needs to be addressing one of those goals. Shameless plug, if you ever hear Dr. Young or me do our presentations on board, or on superintendent evaluations, you're gonna hear us talk about every single thing on that superintendent evaluation should be tied to a district-wide goal, not just a goal for that individual position, but how the goals you have for that position tie back. And one of the things I asked my district staff to do this year is when we start doing budgeting again next year, and even in between when they come and ask us for this purchase, for that change or whatever, my question every time is going to be, what district goal does that purchase tie into? What district goal does that hire tie into?
we saw that so when we did League 2021, it was well received, and we thought we did a really good job with it. And then we got to redo it and did League 2.0, and we narrowed it down to those 4 goals. And what was really interesting is when the different department heads got their course of action, the comments that I heard and that we heard was that now the principals and the teachers had all lined up, because we simplified it and made it these 4 goals, and then we built the structure, or the lead, the A team, our leads and department heads built the structures, and now it's like the teachers know, the teacher team leads in each grade know, the principals know, and it was neat to hear that and see how it was like, okay, it all goes back up to here.
Right. And that's a fabulous model, and I know Lead Point 2.0 is relatively new, like.
Yes.
What, within the last year, right? So you're.
Yeah, we did it,
you're
redid it,
transitioning.
and we worked on it 18, adopted in worked on it 19, yeah, worked on it 18, adopted in 19,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
So within the last couple of years,
Yeah.
that's, and I love the fact that you are tying one of those portions of Lead 2.0 to every agenda item, because if you're gonna claim that those are your 4 priorities as a district, you don't need to be wasting time in the boardroom discussing things that don't advance those 4 goals, unless it's some kind of emergency situation, right? You have Snowmageddon and you need to discuss, are we gonna pay the maintenance guys overtime for coming in and fixing broken pipes?
yes,
If you got any extra money, you can send it our way to pay our overtime guys. They were not used to freezes for sure.
yeah,
So I think you're right in saying that, certainly in your case, goals and policies are one and the same, because you are intentional about the policies that you're setting tying into a district goal. Not every district is that intentional about it. So I would say that's definitely a positive in your favor here, that you're already starting down that path. We'll kind of go into the needs assessment, and like I said, the needs assessment is exactly what the term, assess what the needs collectively of the board are, so we can kind of distill through it and then come back with some specific suggestions on ways that you can improve your effectiveness and your efficiency. Those of you that did give me answers back, I hope I adequately communicated to everybody that, all of the answers are completely confidential. One of the things that we do in my company frequently is we'll post something on social media about, oh, we were so proud to partner with Willis ISD this week for their Team of 8 training. I'm not even doing that on our social media. Like, nobody outside my company even knows I'm here, right? And part of the communication back and forth, I hope I communicated to you that everything that you told me on the phone, everything you put in writing, everything you took a picture of and sent me, every conversation we have in here is 100% confidential with a video recording. I don't know, and I don't know who has the ability to access. I don't know.
I got a quick question, sorry. How do I connect to the password for network? It's asking for an account name and password. Is that just Louis.Sullins and then my normal password?
Let's try that.
Okay.
You
Yeah, well, we
can't-
did all that stuff in there, and so I had to reload.
You can't tell, you have to,
Might
it'll
wanna
it'll
change
be
it after the
recorded.
meeting. I'm gonna change your password.
What's your password, Louis? Talking to the camera.
And might wanna change your silent.
Yes.
Well, those
You
are.
can see you.
I didn't give him a password. Just told him.
I'm just-
You can have it, I could care less.
As I mentioned before we officially started, with these 2 sessions, I am a TEA registered provider, so you will get your 3 hours of training credit for Team of 8, and you will get 3 of your 5 required hours for education based on the framework for school board development, because that's in the background guiding our conversations. So we're not gonna plaster it up here and read through it in unison or anything, but that framework is in the background guiding the discussions. So the first question on the needs assessment was, what is the vision of Grapevine Colleyville ISD? And I put a little caveat at the top to try to do this without phoning a friend, without checking the website. Can you recite from memory the vision, and then the second question was the mission of Grapevine Colleyville ISD. So I got I think 3 responses that were word for word from what it says on the website, but both of those people admitted to having looked it up. I got, I think, 3 that were not word for word, and one of them was a loose interpretation driving at the same thing, and then I got 2 that appeared to be kind of, I think this is what we're gonna do something good for students kind of thing. So right out of the gate here, everybody needs to know and be focused on the official vision and mission of Grapevine Colleyville ISD. Now, interestingly, I had trouble finding where the vision was on the web. Okay? I think If you dig down really deep in some of the LEAD 2.0 documents, it's there in paragraph form, doesn't say like bold, vision, colon, here it is. The mission statement is very easy to find. So I actually had to go up to the search feature at the top of your district website and type in vision, and I found it on an old page that it took me to in that direct search that is actually no longer a tab availability on your website. So if you don't use that specific word search function, you can't find the vision on the website. And I actually took a screenshot of it to show y'all what I was talking about if you're interested.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah. It took me a while to find it, to read it to you.
yeah. So back to my confidentiality statement. If you want to out yourself on something you told me, that's perfectly fine. That's up to you.
I
So-
didn't read it, Jorge, I'm teasing. I
Um,
changed it up a bit.
So the vision and the mission in concert with that LEAD 2.0 framework you have should be guiding every single discussion and every single decision for the district, to the point where you ought to be in the grocery store and see a kid stacking cans of, making a pyramid out of Campbell soup cans and go, he's building the best Campbell soup pyramid ever, and at Grapevine Colleyville ISD, we are building great schools. I don't remember the exact wording there, but that's in your mission, right? The best, building great schools together or something.
Excellent.
Excellent, there you go. He's building an excellent pyramid, and we're doing that at Grapevine. We are building excellent schools. So let's discuss, what is the vision of Grapevine Colleyville ISD?
To empower students to achieve the best that they could be.
I think I printed it out here, I'm gonna look it up. Anybody else?
I have to say, I think that Lisa, you were the only one on the board when we actually developed the mission and the vision, right?
Was I?
No.
Yeah.
Was I?
So
Now I
officially,
know it.
officially, your vision is the Grapevine Colleyville Independent School District inspires, encourages, and empowers students to achieve their full potential in a global society. Sound familiar? Okay. Do we agree or disagree that that is still the vision of Grapevine Colleyville ISD?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got 5 head nods, I've got the superintendent silently, he's giving me a gentle head nod, and I've got 2 no responses. So, is that the vision? And the reason I ask is because if, as the leaders of the district, you don't agree what the vision is, you can never get there. You can't move towards something that you're not agreeing on. So, is this something that our district still moves toward? Is this something that needs to be revisited? I think,
Can you read it again?
yeah. The Grapevine Colleyville Independent School District inspires, encourages, and empowers students to achieve their full potential in a global society.
To me, I can't think of a better vision to have as a school district. I mean, and I think that the board as a whole, we're not all on this to make sure that we do inspire our students, we do encourage our students, we do empower them, which I feel like we do with this, every tool that we possibly can give them, and to the teachers, to fulfill what they need to move on to the next step in life, to be a better, to have the education to whatever they decide to do. Not go to college, to go to college, but regardless, to inspire them and empower them to have the capability to do what they want to do for their next step. I think as a board, if that's not what we're looking at, and we're not all 7 on the same page, then I think we have missed a step somewhere, missed communication somewhere.
I think that covers a lot of bases. I think that where there might be some
you know, not sure if doing this or this is the minutia that's underneath it, right? But I think that we could all agree that that's what we're trying. And I can't imagine why you wouldn't want that for every student. I mean, what would the objection to that be?
Do we all agree?
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, I always have issues with the mission statement and the vision statement on our district. I always feel that they're like backwards.
Backwards?
Yeah, like the vision should be the mission and the mission should be the vision. I'm saying that because a vision is more of a aspirational thing, but a mission is something that we do every day. Like that's what we worked on. And I feel our vision is what we do every day. And then when you want to be the best district in whatever, state of Texas or this nation, that is very aspirational, right? That's something that you probably would never achieve, or you continue to move towards that. So I always felt that the mission and the vision are kind of one to be the other. But I mean, they're both there, and I believe in both. It's just I just feel that they're mistitled or So that's. But other than that, I definitely agree on what we're trying to do in terms of not only like making sure that the kids reach their full potential, but one of the things that we do is explore what that potential is, right? By allowing kids to explore all these different opportunities that we offer. And one of the things that we do from LEAD 2021, which is kind of the establishment of all these programs to focus on the needs of the kids, then LEAD 2.0 is actually looking back and say, okay, where exactly did we miss in our communication? Because we see the participation of these kids in the program, but we see there's a lot of groups that are misrepresented in some of these opportunities where we say, oh, you know what, if we had a better communication tool, resources, we could get more kids into these programs that they're not participating now, and they will understand that, you know what, you actually could do this that you didn't think you could do in the past, like, I don't know, something will be like girls in computer science. We don't have that many girls doing computer science in the nation, right? So I like the idea of inspiring, showing what the potential should be, and allow you and help you get there, versus just taking a kid and trying to, without having a lot of offering, a lot of information to get them to where they should be. I feel that, your parents might be a set of inspiration, but will also be kind of a set of limitation, right? Because if my dad is a barber, my mom worked at a factory. So if I just look at what they did, I might not be here. But when I went to a school that had everybody pretty much going to college, that basically opened your eyes. So you know what, those are the possibilities that GCISD shows students that maybe in their home environment or family or whatever they will not see. So the potential that a mom could see on their kid is gonna be maybe very different to what us as a district will see on the kid, because we have all these other areas of opportunity that they don't know. So I think that is part of, in this case, the mission, which is inspire to something more than what you saw you could do yourself. So.
We were talking, believe it or not, at the dinner table this last week, and Walker, the senior that he is, just scoffed and rolled his eyes at the thought that graduation of all students should be a goal, because, as he put it, any sentient being should be able to graduate, right? That goal was way too low. If that was our goal, every kid graduates, that was just such a minimum bar with the opportunities that are available in the district. And I think one of the really good things about our mission or vision, whichever one you're talking about, is that there's not some kind of minimum standard. There's not some low bar, nor is there any specific guarantee, right? It's not like, 50% of our kids are gonna go to college. Well, maybe 75% of the class of 22 is going to college, and 30% of the class of 23 is going to college because the other kids are deciding to join the military or, you know, do a certification program, right? So it's that opportunity that I think is a real key. And so, you know, inspire, empower, right? We give them the opportunities and the availability, and then let them, you know, decide where that takes them.
Empower them to raise that.
And this has to be intentional, and I don't think we were as intentional in LEAD 2021 as we are trying to in LEAD 2.0. And to give you an example, my two brothers went to Bowie High School in Arlington, and my mom didn't speak English, so I was there talking to the teachers and the principals and all that. And, you know, when my brother got a C, I went to school. And it wasn't a final grade, it was kind of a mid-grade, you know, mid-year. And I said, you know, what's going on here? My brothers are not C students. And they said, oh, you know, Hispanic kid in that school. Oh no, he's doing fine, he's gonna do great, you know. And I'm like, no, you know, that's not meeting our expectations. So if in their school, their expectation is less than what mom and dad and brother have, that is a problem, right? So we have to make sure that we set those higher expectations on everybody so that, you know, they don't, because my brother was just laughing, he was just smiling when I was at the meeting, because he was not doing anything and getting a C, and everybody was fine in the school, so why would he do any better, right? So we have to make sure also that we set those high expectations. You know, we're giving you the opportunity to participate in X, Y, and Z, but the expectation is that you're gonna put the work, because we're not giving you an A or a B for free. You know, there's some expectations that we as leaders of this district, Dr. Ryan and his staff, we have to set those high expectations, not just about presenting the programs. It's also making sure that kids understand that, you know, the opportunity is here, but you gotta work to achieve. If not, it ain't gonna work.
I want to circle back to something that Ms. Cantor said earlier, and it kind of ties all of this in. You used the word minutia, like there's a lot of minutia underneath these. So if you look at this vision statement, sort of the key words are the inspire, encourage, and empower to achieve full potential, and then you have this in a global society at the end, right? But there is a tremendous amount of minutia, because what inspires one student may not inspire another. What is expected of one student may not be expected of another. And so if you go back to those things that a board is responsible for, you hire and evaluate a superintendent to put systems and personnel in place to take care of that minutia, to see that the staff is getting professional development that is specifically designed to inspire, encourage, and empower students. That the right personnel, if this personnel, you know, if we've got them in a leadership position and they just don't buy into inspiring, maybe they need to be in some other position. And that's a day-to-day operational minutia thing that the superintendent is responsible for. But all of you, as the elected leaders representing your community for this school district, you know, have to be on the same page that this is where we're going. Like Jorge was saying, the vision is where we're going. That's our aspiration of where we want to get to. We want to see that all 14,000 some odd students are inspired, encouraged, and empowered to achieve their full potential in a global society. Now we can pick those words apart, and I have a feeling that there are some certain words in there that may be trigger words, just based on my own experience in my district and my own experience working with other districts. You know, there are words out there in the education field that are sort of code word trigger words, right? And I know that y'all have experienced some of this recently and been in the news over some of these. But if I start, you know, throwing out some 3-letter word acronyms, hackles go up on the back of people's neck, right? And so I think that global society, I'm speculating here. If I'm completely off base, throw one of your new shirts at me and I'll give it back and move on. But we all have to be focused on that. On this idea of inspiring, encouraging, and empowering, I pulled up my district in Conroe and stats for your district. Now, these are a couple of years old. These are, I get them from the Texas Tribune website because it's so
Sure.
easy to navigate, and it's all right there on one page, and I don't have to flip back and forth between TEA spreadsheets, but it's all directly from the TEA spreadsheets. So I know that you, in some of my conversations, some of you are very proud of your gifted and talented. You're very proud of the opportunities that your kids have for things like CTE and STEM and things like that. So we're just as proud in Conroe. We're 69,000 students, so size-wise, you know, we're bigger, but we are very diverse, which I think that your community is as well. When you look at socio-demographic breakdowns, you are a very diverse community, racially, economically, you know, you pick your identifier, it's out there. So you have, or as of 2019, because reporting issues with 1920 were delayed a little bit, at the end of 2019, you had over 20% of your student population enrolled in gifted and talented. You had over 30% of your student population enrolled in some CTE, some form of CTE under that umbrella. So 20%, 30%. My own district's only 7.5% gifted and talented, and only 25% CTE. So I think you're doing a fabulous job in some of these areas of inspiring, encouraging, and empowering these students to live into their full potential. I would suspect if you're, again, knowing some of you, knowing a little bit about this district, you know, you've got kids in CTE that they're there because they're going to be their chosen career. They're going to be cosmetologists, they're going to be vet techs, they're going to be welders, they're going to work in an auto shop. You have some kids that are in those programs because they don't know what they want to do, and that sounds pretty cool, and that's an opportunity for them to figure out what inspires them. And then you have some kids who are doing that so that they can go to college and major in engineering and work at Supercuts to pay their way through Texas A&M, right?
Whoop.
I knew there'd be one. I knew there'd be one.
There's more than one.
So there'd be at least one whoop, whether they were an Aggie or not, there'd be one whoop.
God's country.
So we'll move on. That's a long discussion about the vision, but I thought it was very interesting that I got 3 responses that were word for word from this really hidden part of the website, and 1 or 2 that were rough translations of that same thing, 1 that was really not on that mark. So I think that's going to be one of my recommendations when I come back is examine that vision, and is that the mark that we're all going to agree to row towards?
So I had to hear from Shannon and Casey and Shannon, this is, mission and vision of any organization is critical. And we would like to hear, are you okay with this? Are you not? Any issues you have? I mean, when I came to the board, I saw them, other than thinking they were, you know, flip, I saw they were very good. You know, they were aspirational, being the best. I always thought, you know, we should be the best district in the state, and that should be a goal, and we're very close. I feel that we're the best diverse district in the state, you know, because in terms of college readiness and, you know, prepping people for college, the best districts are, you know, 5 of them are less than 1% poverty, the other one is 9, which is Coppell, and then it's us, right? So in terms of that, I felt that those were very, very doable goals in terms of mission and vision. But you guys have any comments, any feedback on, oh, you're okay with it, you know, which also.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we have a good vision in the sense that who doesn't want to inspire people? Who doesn't want to encourage people? Who doesn't want to empower people? I mean, I think Lisa said it right. I mean, if you don't want to do that, then why are you here, right? Kind of wasting your time. I think the difference is we all agree on that being your vision or your mission, because I kind of agree that sometimes you can flip them on what you really say it is. But the crux is, how do you get there? That's where I think people start splitting hairs and disagreeing. So I think we agree on, yes, we want to empower, we want to inspire, we want to give them the best, but how do you do it with limited resources? I mean, if we all had, you know, a rain cloud that could come over and give you buckets of money, the world's your oyster. But you also have to take that with the goals, the five, you know, we gotta do a budget, we gotta pass it, we gotta have a tax rate, so you gotta do that with the confounds of the resources that you're given. So that's where I think a lot of the rub comes in, that's where the, you know, rubber meets the road.
But what's great is that if we agree on this, how we get there, knowing that we're trying to get there to the same point, I think if we can agree on this, then the getting there is gonna be much more comfortable, right? We can, you know, we can talk about the getting there as long as we agree that this is what we're still trying to do.
How are you, Shannon? Any comments on this vision, mission?
I mean, I think Casey explained that well. I think there's just different thought processes and how, you know, you can accomplish things. And, you know, one of the things that I just noticed, and this is kind of, it's not addressing this question directly, but it's in everything that comes out of anyone's mouth. No one is able to self-reflect in a way that ever allows for improvement. Everything, you know, we're the best of it. No, we're not. We've got a lot of work to do to be the best. I want to be the best. I want to chest pound. I want to do all, you know, beat everybody and all the stuff. But, you know, when you aren't able to step back and actually self-evaluate what you're in and that we can actually improve, you can't improve. If you can't acknowledge that you have improvements to make, you're never going to improve.
So you're saying we're not self-evaluating?
I don't hear self-evaluation, ever, no.
But in our mission statement, it says, we are the best, it says to be the best. And that is building excellent schools together.
So we were talking
We're not
about,
stating that we're the best, that's what we're trying to achieve. And through a superintendent evaluation, through identifying Lead 2.0 and having those 4 goals, and then empowering our A-team to disseminate that down and build the structure underneath it, and having that as a measuring stick, is that not self-evaluation?
well, it's not self-evaluation just in the fact of what you're saying. So what you're saying, basically, is, I say we need to self-evaluate, and you go, but are we not self-evaluating?
So the question to you is, what do we need to do
The
then?
words we're parsing are, we aspire to be the, I mean, so again, you wanna parse words when I'm saying that it's just about self-evaluating, being able to say whether or not where we're weak, where we need to be better, how we can be better.
So where is that? What is your suggestion, or if you,
That's why we're gonna have this discussion.
And I think that
we're having,
what,
we're
Because
having
when
it.
I'm hearing, just hearing that interaction there, you ask for her opinion, she gives it, and immediately we're on the defensive. And we're not saying everything that goes on is horrible.
Where are we on?
This is team training, we're talking. It's my right to talk. So, well, this is exactly what we're talking about. She gives her explanation, then you ask for it, she gives a great explanation. You can agree to disagree, that's okay. But we get on the defensive. And so you didn't really, in my opinion, seem like you really wanted to know what we had to think, because we immediately got on the defensive. Just take a step back, reflect, and see what it is that you think you can work upon. We'll talk through it, right? We don't have to do it immediately, because you need to sit back and reflect and talk, but I mean, that's kind of the stuff where it just seems like, you know, we say something and all of a sudden, you're on the defensive and now we're on the defensive.
so my takeaway from this though, is that, and I'm new, I mean, Casey and I came in together. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of things for the first time, and some of them I'm blown away. Like, I thought we were the best. I can confirm that we're the best at some things, right? I can now really say that with some confidence that are things we do very well. But there's some other things that I'm like, we don't do that. I mean, you know, so I think there's nothing to be defensive about, because I think it's an opportunity to, you know, just double check. I mean, you know, maybe we could all agree we're doing the best on it. It's not a ding against, the district, it's not a personal ding. It's something that everybody, if we're doing this vision, and we're all going, you know, we're all paddling the same direction, then it's going to have somebody go, hey, did you notice that rock over there? Hey, did you notice that, you know, there's some rapids ahead? Hey, did you, you know, paddle on the left, paddle on the right? You know, so I think that making some observations, particularly for folks who are new, particularly folks who are learning things kind of every day, and hearing from parents that, you know, because a lot of times we've all worked in our little worlds, in my bubble world of PTA, we love the schools, right? But then you start talking to folks outside your little bubble and you go, huh, really? So I think that my perspective is that if the vision is good, and that's the way we're paddling, but the inspection of the vision is something that we can all look at critically without trying to say that we're working to make it better. We're not trying to slam it, we're trying to make it better. You know, so that's inspiring. We're inspired to make it better, and I think if we operate under that framework, then we will get better. Because getting defensive gets us nowhere. It kind of, everybody's got their oar in the water, we're just stopping, we're holding. But if we're, you know, oh, look at the rock, okay, let's look at the rock. Is it a rock? No, it's not a rock, it's a beaver. Okay, keep going, you know. So I think that the perspective, and I'm just gonna speak as somebody who's, you know, pretty new to this job, I've been here 13 months, that there are things that are surprising to me too. That doesn't make me love the district any less, it actually makes me love a little bit more, because it gives me something to work on. If we're the best, then we have nothing to work on. So, and again, it's not to say that we're not working on it, we are. We do the superintendent evaluation, we talk about vendors, we talk about personnel, we talk about these things, and I think if we're all looking toward the vision and approaching people with having the best intent, I think that's how we get better, and that's how we get to best.
But we also need to look at the fact, and this goes for all of us, is that we're looking at that rock, and that's a rock, and I think it's a beaver, and you stick to it, that's a rock come hell or high water. I'm not changing my mind, that's a rock, and I'm not changing my mind, that's a beaver. That's where the work comes in.
Sure.
To work together to
Right.
get you to agree that that's a
And
rock.
it's okay if you disagree, you can
Of
still get
course,
along and
sure.
agree.
That's the only way we're gonna be able
You can agree to
to.
disagree, and sometimes that's just where you settle, and that's okay.
So I think Scott made a really great point at the very beginning about the mission and the vision and the agreement. I mean, this is a team of 8. And there should be 8 responses to what the vision and the mission are. Because if we are, it doesn't matter the other things, adopt the goals and priorities, adopt the policy. That's the nuts and bolts. That's how you're gonna do improvement and look for areas of places to work on. But Shannon, I would really like to know, because Casey answered it to some degree, I really want to know what your vision for this district is and what you believe the mission of the district should be.
And after
Now,
that, I wanna hear it in everyone's words, what their vision and mission is as well.
Okay.
So
Then
that's
that's-
one of the
that's
questions, a
great.
couple down. So can we put a pin in that and come back to it, Ms. St. John?
Okay,
And
sure.
we'll do that very thing if y'all are comfortable doing
Those
that.
are the next 2 questions.
That-
Those are the next 2 questions on the.
Yeah.
those are-
So on the vision, on the mission, let's talk about that real quick, okay? I actually found 2 slightly different mission statements on the website. Under this kind of sort of secret if page I got through in the back door that had the vision, it has mission and beliefs as well, okay? So there, it says the mission of Grapevine Colorado Independent School District is to be the best, period. New sentence, we will promote good citizenship and prepare, motivate, and encourage each student to reach his or her full potential with a safe, caring, cooperative environment by providing an effective and enduring education. So the thing about mission statements and visions is they should be somewhat measurable. You should be able to look back and say, we did X and it accomplished this part of the mission statement and therefore it got us this much closer to the vision. We accomplished Y, it accomplished this part of the mission statement and it got us this much closer to the vision. So there's a lot of meat in there, but there are definitely some measurable things in there. That's not the version of the mission statement that I got in the answer on the responses. The first part is, but there's a different second part, okay? So if you just go to the website, click district information, I'll go to that tab, you mean that page that pops up tells we're a K through 12 public school system, heart of the Metroplex, committed to educational excellence, rigorous curriculum. And then the last sentence in that paragraph, you have to be reading for it to realize it's talking about mission statement, and it says, our mission is building excellent schools together, to be the best. And that was, some version of that was more closely related to the answer. So we've still got this mission of being the best. But I think one of the things that's definitely come out in this part of the conversation is whose definition of best, that's, you know, you can be the best by having the highest SAT scores in the state. You can be the best by having the lowest dropout rate in the state. You can be the best by having the highest scores on your CCMR report at the end of the year, right? But which version of the best are we going to define as the best? In that second version, building excellent schools together, again, getting into that minutia, what does an excellent school look like? How do we measure the excellence of a school? And what does it mean to be the best, right? I think what I'm interpreting from the way I got to these different parts of the website is that first mission statement, the longer version, seems to be something that was a holder was previous.
Yes, all.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you had this section on the website at one point that was vision, mission, beliefs, and I'm guessing as part of Lead 2.0 and putting that stuff on the website that contains all of that somewhere in those documents, this page got archived, right?
Pretty much, it looks like it.
That's what I'm interpreting, what little I know about technology. So at one point there was this mission statement that we're going to promote good citizenship. Okay, there's actually a TEKS in social studies about good citizenship, right? That's actually something we can measure. Are we fulfilling this TEKS that addresses good citizenship? And I think, you know, you could argue that CCMR is part of good citizenship. Are we turning out people who are prepared to be productive citizens in the world? By going to college, by entering a career, by entering the military, and our K through 12 system has prepared them to do that. Prepare, motivate, and encourage each student. We're actually repeating some of the same language from the vision statement. So which one is which, right? If we're using, like, you can't use a word to define that word. So if part of our vision is encouraging, we can't really be talking about encouraging in the vision because we're just talking about the same thing. So I think this is back to Jorge's point about flip-flop, like which one is the aspiration and which one is the vehicle to get there. So I think that's definitely a conversation moving forward. So I just kind of want to bring that into the conversation that even on the mission statement, I found two different versions depending on how I look for it. Very similar, you still got the best part. One of them has some measurable components. The one that's more of the public face mission statement really is not measurable. How are we going to determine if we're building excellent schools? Now you may have addressed that. You may have some operational stuff that Dr. Ryan is responsible for evaluating and his leadership staff that addresses that. I would hope so, but that's sort of beyond the conversation of boardroom stuff. That's day-to-day superintendent operational team of 8 training, you 7 hire the 1 to handle that stuff, right? Okay. So then the next two questions were about your personal vision and your personal mission as a trustee. And if everybody's comfortable, I love the idea of going around the room and people sharing that. Because while we need a unified direction for, if you consider legally you are one entity. You are not 7 individuals. You can only act as one entity, right? A vote is taken, it's 4-3, that is the action of the entity. Whether it's 7-0, 4-3, that is the action of the singular entity. So as an entity, you need to have an agreement on where we're going and how we plan to get there. Now, individually, you can have your own personal vision and your own personal mission. And this is probably going to speak somewhat more to your motivation for being on the board, right? And I think that's important to share and be honest with each other about why you're sitting in this room. What is your vision as an individual trustee? What are you bringing to the table? What aspirations and vehicles are you bringing to the table to achieve your part in your seat as 1/7 or 1/8 of a singular entity? So, you want to?
Why don't you read them? Read what you have.
Okay.
Oh, I'd like to read
Well,
mine.
yeah, I actually think it would be
Okay.
better if we would have read it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'll
I
start.
may have changed my mind.
I got mine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like I said, I assume these are flip, and my vision, vision is something aspirational, mission is what you do every day. So in my personal vision for GCISD is to be the best public schools institution in the state and one of the best in the nation. So kind of follow to be the best, building excellent schools together. And I define that, what is an excellent school, that you asked that. And for me, K12 is a conduit to college, or a career, or the military. So we are here to prepare kids for college, or to go into some sort of a professional career. So I'll measure the excellence in how well we prepare kids for that. That's why for me personally, STAR is not really a meaningful measure of success, because I feel that STARs measure this quick sprints, 3rd grade, 5th grade, whatever, while we have more of a K12 Marathon to get kids prepared for this goal, which is to get them not only into college, but be successful in college, right? Because the point is not to get you there, is to get you graduated from, 4-year institution. But of course, we know that that's not for everybody, so we have to have these other great options for people that don't want to do that. What I always struggle with many districts is the fact that you look at the kid and you kind of make this assumption that they could do this but not that. And what we want to do is make sure that the options are there for you to do whatever you want to do. So that's kind of what I feel, being the best public school institution in the state and one of the best in the nation is. And my dream was to always be recognized as a very strong, one of the best schools in the nation. And in terms of mission, like I said, we want to flip those two, and we get into more of the inspiring kids for their full potential. And for me, it's about just providing leadership, resources needed to ensure every student fulfills his or her potential as they move from K to 12 into college, the military, or the professional career. So those are kind of my 2 answers.
Dr. Ryan, would you care to answer as your unique 1/8 of the team of 8 from your different perspective as a superintendent?
Yeah, so my vision is every student succeeds, and that's a lot harder to do than it is to say. And so, especially when you start talking about people and all the different people that go together to work it out, it makes it really, really a challenging thing. But I think about a kid in Doug Poteet's automotive class that can fix anything, right? And he hates every other class that he's going to. I think he's going to be successful, but it may not be the same kind of success that other people would view as being successful. And so, and then there are kids that, that come to our board meetings that just kind of blow us away with how brilliant they are, even at like third and fourth or fifth grade at playing the school game. And so that's a different kind of success too. So I think how I define student success kind of differs with every kid. And then as far as the mission goes, my personal mission is to provide an excellent experience for my family and for my schools. And those are the two most important things to me, is family and school. And I try to be a good dad, a good granddad, a good husband that somebody could look up to. And then I also try to make sure that our schools are doing the very best that they can for every kid that walks through our doors, no matter where they come from. I don't know about y'all, but there's a lot of poverty in my background. And the thing that changed it was somebody had mercy on my dad and gave him a basketball scholarship to Cisco Junior College, Harvard at Cisco, right? So, and he turned that into a 4-year degree at Hardin-Simmons, and then, first, I mean, his dad had a second grade education. Smart guy, but that was all of his formal education, and so it really changed our lives and his family, and then for our families on after that. And I think we have a lot of people that are like that in our community, whether we realize it or not. And so I think it's very personal for me to have every kid have that kind of opportunity. Going back just a little bit to the mission statement, when I came here 12 years ago, I'm reading the mission statement and I'm thinking, all right, to be the best, and the best was capitalized, and I found it really hard to understand what that meant, so I had to make it meaningful to me. And before convocation that year, I didn't know what I was going to say, and so, but I knew I had to connect things back to the mission statement, and so that's when I came up with building excellent schools together. And to me, I say it all the time, you can't build excellent schools by yourself, and you can't build excellent schools if you're not together. And so it takes the business community and parents and trustees and other school employees and kids all to make excellent schools. And so that's kind of where that came from. People have latched onto it. We begin every single principals meeting with, our mission is to be the best, and we define that as building excellent schools together, because I want to send a message of whether you're an elementary school principal or a middle school principal or a high school principal, we're all on the same page, and we're all doing the same thing. And I think back at the little first graders that I remember by name, who are now seniors. And it's so amazing to just kind of see who they've grown up to be through the opportunities that we have provided them collectively as a community. And so that helps me understand that it really is about every student succeeding. So that's my thing.
So you brought up an excellent point I was actually going to mention at the end of this, and since you brought it up, we'll address it now. Dr. Ryan has a clear definition in his head of what the best looks like, with that caveat of building excellent schools together. So I'm suspecting that when you're talking to these principals and these assistant principals and these teachers, again, you have something, at least in your mind, that they understand what the bar is for excellence, how we're going to define excellence. Whether that is an actual mathematical metric that we're going to meet, or whether it is just a culture that we're going to establish, a culture of excellence. So you've got, as the operational leader, you've got that definition in mind. You can have individual definitions. The reason for separating these out into what's the goal, the vision of the district, what's your personal vision, is because your personal vision and mission, you're gonna know what that means. If you use qualifying words like best, excellent, innovative, in your mind, you have a definition for those and what it means to meet that. Purpose of that longer discussion at the beginning is we all have to agree on what the meaning of those terms are in the vision and the mission, and be measuring them the same way. Is it, I apologize,
Shannon.
Brown or Braun?
Braun.
Braun, okay, Ms. Braun.
Yes. So for my personal vision, I had to give students ample amounts of growth opportunities, extracurriculars, challenging classes, and more importantly, teach students to think critically and be able to problem solve. And then for my mission statement, I had to raise the standards of a declining district academically, to have transparency in the way that we do the district's business, and to focus on quality.
Okay, just a couple of questions on that. So you mentioned declining academically. Is there data to support that? Are star scores dropping? Are we having, are we showing evidence of declining academically? And if so, is it specifically COVID related, or is there something else systemic going on?
There was
Well,
a
so-
big COVID dip. There was a big
Okay.
COVID dip. I'm sorry.
So we've been on a decline for a while. You know, my kids, well, first of all, I went through the system myself. So I know that when I went to college, I was not prepared for college through Grapevine High School. My daughter, who was next, and my husband, well, he went to the Naval Academy, and he probably wasn't as prepared as he needed to be either. So, you know, I've watched and lived, and so I've seen, and my kids are 5 school years apart. So what my daughter's experience was versus what my son's was night and day. It was a completely different, so we had a shift in how we were doing things. And at that point, I started watching a decline. And yes, we do have, we've had performance declines for a while. You know, take COVID out of it. And so yes, quality matters to me. Challenging stuff matters to me. Improving upon those matters to me.
Okay. And the other word that jumped out of there was transparency.
Mhm.
Are you talking about financial transparency, board operational transparency?
Everything, everything transparency. I can give you an example. So we've had people come to board meetings, and they've had concerns with, you know, books and things that are being read, and if it's appropriate or not for kids. And so our district responded great. Like they heard the parents, they addressed it through, they were open, they were honest, they actually had ownership of it, they did a great job. But then the next couple steps, so then the next things then become, they're no longer transparent. So they get people together, they don't actually give you, they give you a 5-sentence synopsis on a book, so you don't really know what you're approving. So really, we went through a whole lot of jumps and a whole lot of circus to not actually accomplish anything. So it seems like a waste, it just, the whole thing, just seeing it. So then it causes frustration, because you're not really ever gonna get anything done. You're just gonna stay status quo, which is exactly where that process is. So that's not transparent.
Thank you. Mr. Ford?
Yeah, vision, you know, giving kids opportunities, teaching them to be critical thinkers, you know, so that's sort of my vision, you know, what I think the school should be. My personal mission is, so, you know, I kind of take a step back and think, my role as a trustee is to be oversight over GCISD, because it's a separate entity, and the board's a separate entity. We work together in tandem to complete my vision, which is give the kids the opportunity, critical thinkers, be prepared to go out in the work world, right? Whatever it ends up being. So I think you have to hold people accountable. I think you do have to have tough conversations. You know, you're not always gonna get your way, and that's okay. You know, the other party shouldn't always get their way either. You're gonna have difference of opinion. So for me, it's really accountability, you know, but probably my main mission, and, you know, I guess transparency. I'm more of a numbers guy, so to me that's important. You know, that's what I do for a career. You gotta be very transparent. You know, you're putting things out in emails all the time, so you gotta be able to back it. So probably my main motivation, and then I think you have to take a step back too and realize, you know, a lot of us, when we first came on this board, COVID didn't exist. In fact, I think it didn't, when we even put our name in the hat goalie to run, COVID wasn't an issue. And so you have to go back and reassess, you know, why did I originally run versus what do I have to do now? I've had to change that. And if no one in this room has reassessed and changed sort of what their mission is, then you need to reassess and change it, because what I came in thinking I was gonna do is completely different than what I've been doing. So just, you know, not always necessarily, I guess, having group think, but just taking critical lens on what we're all doing and then coming together and saying, yeah, we need to reevaluate what's important, what do we need to focus on. And sometimes it's gotta be, what do we need to focus on monthly, what do we need to focus on, you know, annually, and what's our 3 or 4 year goal, so.
I think that's a great point about the reassessment is, you know, if you've had the same vision and the same mission statement as a district, not even just individual, but as a district for 10, 12, 15 years, we definitely need to reassess and say, because, I mean, those intervening years have brought huge changes. Ms. Parker, was it you that said you've been on the board for?
Forever.
Something about graduating Methuselah or something, I don't know. So I'm, you know, in your time on the board, I'm sure that things have changed drastically. Dr. Ryan, in your time as a superintendent, I'm sure that the way that you go about managing the district has changed drastically. I think we can all agree, in the last 23 months, the landscape of education in America has changed drastically. COVID has brought a whole new set of challenges to every classroom in every district in the nation, right? Teacher shortages, for whatever reason, have brought tremendous challenges that we didn't see a decade ago. I was reading an article this week, colleges in Oklahoma are closing down their education departments because they don't have enough students entering that want to be teachers. And so the colleges can no longer financially sustain having an education department to train teachers. You know, school safety has drastically changed the landscape of schools in the last 10 to 20 years. My first career was in law enforcement, and I was on the front lines in the late 90s of training police officers to respond to school shootings because we had had 2. And now we're having 2 or 3 a week around the country, it seems like, right? Cybersecurity has drastically changed. Now, some of those are operational, you know, more on the operational side, but some of them are definitely board issues. We have data to show there is declining academic performance. We have a pandemic that is either creating or exacerbating that. And boards are responsible for ensuring individual student outcomes. You remember ISO training, right? You gotta do it again this year. Legislature changed, you gotta get a new ISO training. It's no longer ISO, but same thing. So things are constantly evolving, which means if we're not constantly reevaluating our organization's vision and mission, as well as our own individual vision and mission, we're behind the ball. I think it's an excellent point that Mr. Ford brings up. Ms. Pardo.
First, I want to go to something Shannon had said about self-evaluate. So right off the bat, I'd like to say we need to self-evaluate and look at the fact that our mission and vision statement are so difficult to find. That should be on the forefront of that page. When you pop open our district, you should be able to see what our vision and mission statement is. It's difficult, it's sad that he had to look, I did too. I mean, I really had to go in and search. I didn't read it. You can read my answer.
She just now did that.
Again, outing yourself is voluntary, Ms.
Just
Pardo.
now.
But I did, after we had our conversation, I was trying to find what our true
I just
vision,
looked at two.
and it was hard to find.
I found 2 missions.
So, we are here to build excellent schools together, and that is to have those conversations. We need to stop looking at the fact, I know I'm off point, But we've got to stop looking at the fact that we're trying to get each other. We're not here to get each other. We're here to work together. And that part of that is the team of 8 and to self-evaluate and to say, we're not the best. We're working to get to be the best, but we're not. And yes, I am the one that was the only one on the board that started the mission and vision statement. If you all want to stone me afterwards, I'll meet you in the parking lot. And remember what I carry.
Hey, I was gonna say, I know that. Can I tell you how nice you look?
But that is something that we need to look at. It's difficult to find our mission and vision. And I do agree that I could see that the mission and vision could flip. I think we've had those conversations in the past as well. I'm really gonna get Jesse on speaker, we can, yeah, that again. What I look at as far as the vision, is to ensure that every student in our district, regardless of their background, receive the best education that can possibly be to not only change their life, but their families' lives. Because it's not only about our students in a lot of circumstances, it is about their families. And that's where we look at Collegiate Academy. One of the proudest things I can say as a board member is that we were partnered with TCC and started Collegiate. How many lives have changed? First generation, graduating first generation college, and it's changing the kids' lives and their families' lives. So to me, that's my vision. It's just to make sure every student, it's not all about the top 10%. It's about, I was not the top 10. I wasn't even in the middle, you know. I had a teacher call my parents in and tell me I was borderline special. We all know I'm special. But we cannot look at the student and their circumstances or their appearance and write them off. And I think as a district, that's something we do not do. And I'm so proud of the fact we do look at each of our students and we do have them write their own personal statement of what they want to achieve, and we work with them on that. Personally, what I've aspired to do and to be as a trustee is to be someone that has integrity and is able to work with other trustees and to listen to what the community says and to listen to what our trustees say. And over the last 17 years, we haven't always had boards that have the same vision and mission. So this is nothing new, that we all have a different vision and mission. But the one thing that we have been able to do is agree to disagree, listen to each other without judgment, and leave the room with one thing in mind, and that is educating our students and supporting the district. And that's from the top of the line to the bottom. I don't think there's really any top to the bottom. We should all be treated equally. But that's been my role for 17 years, or I feel like it has been what I've achieved, or what I've tried to achieve.
Thank you. Mr. Sellers?
17 years? You said it.
Long time.
Call me Louie, don't call me Mr. Sellers. That's my grandfather. So for me, I said on the vision piece is, and I've said this for several years, is to continue building upon the foundation that's been laid before us, because, you know, we're a 100-year-old district, and there has been great leaders before us. And that's not to say we haven't lost our way a few times and had mistakes, because, you know, we're not the best, but we want to strive to be the best. And through that, you have to write goals, you have to track those goals, then you have to assess them, reevaluate, and adapt. At least that's how I write my goals for every year and for quarterly as well. You know, we have a district So it's interesting, when I started out, when my daughter was in kindergarten, who's now a freshman, started out as a watchdog, and then got asked to sit on the campus excellence committee, and got asked to sit on the district excellence committee. And I'll never forget, I went to Timberline Elementary School. We went to a kindergarten class, and this young Hispanic girl had written her personal, I think you were there with me, maybe. And I remember we were standing in this hallway. Out came these 3 kids and the teacher, and there's probably like 10 of us adults. And I remember these 3 kids, I mean, they were kindergarten, I mean, this tall. And they were looking up, and I remember kneeling down or squatting down to get on her eye level. But she told me her personal mission statement was to get better at math. And she had it on the wall, and and I was just like, oh my gosh, I just had a 5-year-old be able to tell me what her goal is for this year to an adult. I mean, you know how intimidating that would have been? And so we have a district that has elementary schools that are 2% economic disadvantage, and we have classes that are Title I schools that are 72% economic disadvantage. And we, when I say build up on the foundation, give all these opportunities to these children. That's the vision. The mission is to have the monetary, have the facilities, have the teachers and the staff to meet the needs of those students that are in our school district. The 13,000 students we have, the 36,000 households that we have, and the 87,000 residents that reside in our basically 4 cities that feed our district. With that being said, it's like to Lisa's point, the one thing that's really touched me is Collegiate Academy, because that started a year before I got on the board, and then I got to be part of it afterwards and help grow, is that you're not just changing kids' lives, you're changing generational, forward and backwards, because then those parents aren't having to worry about funding college or trying to get the kids a place on their own and living at home. So for me, my personal mission is to listen to the community, because I know not everybody has the same backgrounds and same beliefs I do, and to provide a safe learning environment for these kids, because some of these kids, their safest place is 8 hours a day in our brick and mortar buildings, where they're going to get fed and they're going to get loved on. You know, and so provide a safe learning environment, and then having the staff, the facilities, and the tools and the budget to fund that. That's what I mean.
So, yeah, so those are all measurable things, like we can
Right.
measure, do we have enough staff, do we have certified teachers to be in every classroom, do we have highly qualified teachers?
Right.
Do we have, do we have enough money to
Right.
pay for purchasing the textbooks, to put gas in the bus, all of those things, right? I wanna mention something that,
And to that point, like right now, like to Casey's point, he's absolutely correct on the standpoint of, you come in thinking one thing, or like, hey, here's what I'm gonna try to do because that's where we're at and you've been involved. But through COVID, take an example for the buses. We didn't have bus drivers. I mean, literally, we're short bus drivers, like 13, I think. At one point, we had them running 2 routes, or people that had their license that didn't drive on a daily basis, and I'm pointing at you because I know some of our coaches that have their license that stepped up and drove. And then you've got board members going and serving lunch. I was at Grapevine High School the second day, and I walked by and I'm like, Coley, what are you doing? She's at Grapevine High School serving lunch. I mean, everybody has stepped up, and so that goes back to, during, like Casey said, that's different right now. What we thought some of the things we need to do, hey, we've got to handle some other things right now.
We'd be subs if they let us.
Yeah, exactly.
They won't let us be subs.
That's right.
so both Lori and Ms. Pardo mentioned the past and building upon the foundations that have come before, and you mentioned previous boards, and there's always ups and downs. There are boards that'll go for a decade, and it's a 7-0 board, and there's no dissension or no outward dissension, and then you go through periods where there's infighting and there's clawing and there's position and all this kind of stuff. That is definitely not unique to GCISD. This is nothing new. and this is nothing unique to your district, right? I mean, you are not the only board that is expressing tensions internally. You are not the only board that has ever had arguments where people are talking about feeling like they're going on the defensive and that their voice isn't really being heard. This is absolutely nothing new. So the point is to move past all of that and figure out how to work through it, give you some tools to work through that. Okay, Ms. Cantor.
So I guess I did get my thing, so my mission and my thing, so I'm gonna, so what I put is, my, vision is to serve all stakeholders with careful and sincere listening, and to do my best to create an education that will serve our students throughout their lifetime. So, and for me, actually, mine have been pretty consistent even through COVID. I hope that always stays the same. I mean, I think that, yes, it can evolve, but I think even you know, with all the different things that have come up, I think that that is consistent. And then for my mission, I put to advocate and promote best practices to ensure academic success, safety and security, fiscal responsibility, and maintaining a great place to work by serving all stakeholders, students, staff, and community. Now, I just campaigned like a year ago, so I got
You got the elevator speech ready to go.
let's do this. So yes, so, you know, my experience in the district has been, I mean, my personal experience in the district has been absolutely exceptional. I have 3 daughters. I've got a freshman in college, so I just graduated one. I've got a senior right now, so I'm about to graduate another one. And I've got a sophomore, and they've navigated gifted, they've navigated special ed, they've navigated, or we have navigated, you know, general education, we have navigated getting to college, navigated athletics, other extracurriculars, CTE. We've had exceptional teachers, we've had teachers who had to power through, and so my personal experience has been that I mean, extraordinary, and that's what inspired me to serve. What I think I can speak to Shannon is that turns out not everybody's had this great experience, right? There are students who are not, because talking about academics that appear to be declining, and we need to, of course, examine that. So what is that? So if that's not my experience, then how do I dig in and be, you know, a good listener and try and help support initiatives that will, you know, turn the ship around if indeed there are things, well, for sure there's always things that have to get, if we're done working, then we're done, right? But, you know, things that we need to work on, so.
Thank you. Ms. St. John?
So for my personal vision, I wrote, and I really wanted to keep this part simple, right? I didn't get verbose on this. So personal vision as a trustee was work as a team of 8 using our own strengths to advance the district's mission and vision. Because I think my role as a trustee is, you know, regardless of what the Texas Education Code is saying, is that as a team of 8, that each of us are contributing, and to use the metaphor you used earlier, rowing in the same direction, right? So, and if we're not working together on the district's mission and vision, then either we need to find out why, or we need to redo the mission and vision. And then my personal mission as a trustee, to use my own skills to the best advantage for GCISD students, staff, parents, and community. That I put the talents God has given me, my curiosity and desire for lifelong learning, to work doing good in my community. In turn, that supports and I feel this deep down in my bones, a personal core tenet and belief in the power of public schools as stated in the Texas Constitution to be the preservation of the rights and liberties of the people. I mean, that is a 30,000 foot view, but that is ultimately what public schools are here to do, is to preserve the rights and liberties of the people. And there's no charge in the Constitution to any other entity to do that. It's not given to private schools. I would argue it's not really even given to charter schools, because you can't even elect a charter board. And so I don't even know how you're preserving the right of people to vote when you have a board that isn't even elected. So, for me, my personal mission as a trustee is I take that oath to the Texas Constitution deeply, deeply, personally and seriously.
Excellent. I hope during that discussion that you heard some other people that you have something in common with, right? I heard a lot of language, maybe using slightly different vocabulary, but really driving at the same point about opportunities and resources for students. I heard conversations about transparency in different forms, accountability, integrity. I heard several people talk about listening, both to each other and to the community. So I really think that at the core, you've got a lot of common pieces that are already there, that your individual visions and missions have a lot of common threads running through them. You're all here kind of for the same purpose, sitting in your 1/8 of the room, right? So now the trick moving on from here is going to be to figure out how what you bring to the table as your personal mission and vision propel this entity towards its vision and mission, right? How much of that oar stroke are you using, and is it all equal? And are we all rowing in the same direction? Or is one of our vision and mission trying to row to the right, and one's trying to go to the left, and we're sitting still? Mr. President, if it's amenable to the chair, could I suggest maybe a 10-minute recess
Yeah.
for Viber? We've been at this for about an hour and a half, so allow people to get up, stretch their legs. And
Let's come back at 7:45.
Great, thank you. Are we back in session,
Yeah.
Mr. President? All right. So I want to spend a little bit of time really kind of zeroing in and talking about League 2.0 and how it guides what you're doing as a district. Because I think that's vital that you're so public and upfront with these four, I keep calling them pillars, but these four priorities that you have as a district, and holding that out in front of everybody. And like I say, I was probably 3 or 4 responses in before I saw mention of a reference to a League 2.0 priority being part of every agenda item. So that takes a big burden off of this conversation where I wanted to go with this, but I do want to talk about that and get kind of your individual perspectives on how that is guiding the district a couple of years into it, and the fact that it was sort of finalized in 19, and now COVID is thrown right at the front of that, and how, if at all, has that disrupted the functionality and the effectiveness of League 2.0. So we talked a little bit about, maybe there's a need to revisit vision and mission for the district, and I'm not saying they need to be changed, I'm just saying I think that needs to be a conversation that everybody needs to agree upon, that this is still where we're going. I think the same thing with League 2.0. It grew out of a previous version of that with League 2021, and in those years leading up, coming up to the end of 2021, you realized, let's revisit this and revamp it based on what's happened in the previous 7 or 8 years since it was drafted. So I want to have a conversation about how the last 2 years have affected League 2.0, and is that still the effective guide for this board's operations? So the question was, just tell me about it in your own words. What was the process? Who was involved? What product did it produce? How is it guiding the decisions of the district? And how is it guiding your decisions as a trustee? So I think I got a good idea. Over 1,000 people total involved, including community stakeholders who were not direct stakeholders of the district. So like business people, empty nesters who didn't have kids in the district, but they're citizens of the district, teachers, administrators. I love the inclusion of students. And I'm also going to roll this next question in there for time's sake. One of the things I noticed that kept coming up in those documents and in the video about it was the word innovate and innovation. So let's have this idea. So y'all tell me how Lead 2.0 is still guiding the corporate body, the entity of GCISD Board of Trustees, and also how is it guiding your individual actions as a trustee, in addition to what does it mean to be innovative district? Are y'all a DOI? Are y'all officially a district of innovation? Okay. I thought I saw that on the website, so. Who would like to start and tell me about how Lead 2.0 is guiding the district?
Well, I'll start. I was the one who made the comment that on our agendas, because at my agendas at my office, when I used work, we always used our mission and our vision and values when we were having conversations. And I think even through COVID, we continue to have that. I mean, if you're gonna fill out a form to be on our agenda, it's there. And what's the Lead 2.0 goal? So even through COVID, we, identify and remove barriers, okay? So we need to all be virtual, so how do we do that? Like, how do we remove the barrier for students and getting them hotspots or places to do work, like parking spaces close to the schools where they could still do work and things like that. I wasn't part of the team that developed these goals, but I talked to lots of folks who were, and I think that even through this, and because we're still focusing on, being best, but trying to keep on doing what's that next best thing for our kids. So between the mission and these goals, I think we've been really consistent. I mean, people's definition of what would be best, masking and not masking, right? That's going to be different, but I think that we still talked about it, and we still voted on it, and we still worked on what was best, as to the best of our abilities.
If y'all see me over here on my phone, I'm not texting or emailing or something. Some web pages I'm able to get to open on my laptop, and some I'm not, so I'm using both devices here.
I just took it you didn't care for what she was saying.
Please don't.
Checking your text
I know, right?
messages.
Hey, thanks a lot for that.
Please don't think
You're
that.
checking your
Meanwhile,
text.
TikTok, no, just kidding.
So I'm having trouble, I think it's probably my computer after me.
You're new, Cole.
I'm having
We'll
trouble
go.
getting some of the websites to load up, and my computer times them out before they come up, so I'm using my phone right now to look up the 4 priorities under Lead 2.0. So
I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking, my goodness.
Oh, you can keep it, you may need to refer to them, I got them right here on my phone now.
You got it now?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
If you look at our 4 goals, these were voted on and worked on and then voted on as a board before majority, not majority, but a couple, 3 of y'all were here. These are way before COVID, and you read these now, and they are just like, you can step right in with all the challenges that we have faced over the last 2 years. Identify and remove barriers, design learning environments, create a culture that fosters learning, and then effectively communicate, which we're all still working on what those do look like with COVID, some more than others, and I think we struggle on one of them, but that just really, to me, is just amazing how these were prepared for a non-COVID, but we're stepping right in and able to continue on 2.0 with the 4 goals that we have.
So do I understand the process? You've got over 1,000 people across the breadth of the community that worked on this as a process, and then all of that information came to a smaller committee that then distilled that input from 1,000 people to create the 4 priorities part of the document?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Or, did you have anything else?
No, sir.
So, I sat on both Lead 2021 and Lead 2.0, and I don't know if it was Corey or it was actually Lisa that said it, that, we worked on these, it came before the board, and it was not passed. It was actually, when we brought it before the board, Jorge actually, and I believe Jesse, had some questions on it, because I sat on it and I had to come me, I think Beck Becky was on it, and no, it was me, Mindy, and someone else.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
Maybe it was Doug. Me, Mindy, and Doug were on it, and we had to come back to the board, and they're like, okay, yeah, this makes sense, but we need some clarity. So we called a whole nother meeting with like the 80-something people and said, okay, here's what the board's challenged us with. Here's some clarity we need, and so we had to go through it again and work on some things to sharpen this up, because they had some insight and had some experience. And so that's what was impressive to me, is that when it went to the board the first run, it wasn't just like, oh yeah, it was like, okay, hey, have you thought about this, what about this? And so we took all those questions back to that 80-person final committee, which was still made up of students, stakeholders, parents, business owners, people that had a stake in our district. And the big thing for me is like, it's the difference between 2021 and 2.0 is that we wanted to have the 4 pillars be very specific, but then underneath it have what it meant for staff outcome, for leadership, what it means to a student, and what it means to our community and stakeholders, versus it just being a blanket, because the question goes back to what you said earlier, and like what Shannon said in terms of evaluation. If a goal's not measurable and you don't have matrix in place to measure it, or the right data points, then how can you tell if it's a success or not? And that's why it was like, we created a picture of it, and what does that look like for the staff, students, and community?
Right.
Because those are our 3 main stakeholders. So one of the things that really pressed upon me, and we didn't know this at the time, because this was pre-COVID, was, I'll never forget, I was sitting at a table and I had 3 or 4 students, and I had a 7th grade student, a 9th grade student, and I can't remember if I had a 5th grader or a 10th grader. I can't remember, because I had that combination. But the 7th grade student looked at me and goes, what's the deal with all the academic stuff? We've got it. That's table stakes. That is a known fact. We have to make grades, period. Parents expect it, teachers expect it, society expect it. And they're like, if we want to get a job, whether that's, and her words were literally, if we want to go to college or get a job, not just go to college, but have a job after high school, it's known for academics. She goes, we need support. We need help navigating. And her words were, we need to understand the emotional and social piece of this. And so then we got together. That was a group of like 10 of us. And then when it came back for all 8 groups of 10, that was a common theme through it. And then here we go. That was pre-COVID. And then we get to COVID, and look at one of the biggest struggles we've had is the well-being of both parents, well-being of students, because there was no social interaction. There was no going to school, and everybody's been isolated. And so to me, that was a really big success, even though we had it prior to COVID, that it's still very evident and still very important and prudent for today's environment with what we're going through and for years to come. So that's my take on these. I'm proud of these. I think they're a lot better than 2021 because it was so big. It was a mile wide and an inch deep. And this is an inch wide and a mile deep because it's focused on our community and what the people need within our district, students, staff, and community.
So that sounds like a couple of people that feel like it's held its own through COVID.
Yeah.
Anybody else have input on that part of it?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that, definitely looking at COVID and some of the things that we were including in the goals. What I said is, I mean, I pretty much kind of paraphrase the goals into kind of small statements of identifying and removing barriers, instruct while supporting student social and emotional well-being, making instruction engaging, fun, just by encouraging students' voice and participation, and continue to effectively communicate to all the GCISD stakeholders. So I feel the 2021 brought us into some sort of status of kind of like a college prep, getting kids prepared for college or careers. But then this one is kind of looking more about the individual needs on maybe non-academic aspects, where you're starting supporting the whole student. And one of the reasons that I had a little bit of a problem with this, with League 2.0, is that I didn't like the fact that we didn't have an academic, like a strong academic goal as part of it. But of course we had these sub-goals that kind of touch in a lot of those areas. But definitely with COVID, this kind of fits right in. And I'm very supportive of these goals, and I feel that we are continuing to evolve and improve in trying to promote, support the students, and also the one that we always say that we continue to struggle, and it's a challenge, is continue to communicate with our community, these different ways and the groups. So that's definitely one area that we continue to work.
I was gonna, before he said that, that was one thing I forgot to say is goal number 4, effectively communicate with target audiences. We have struggled with that for some time.
And I think that speaks to Shannon's comment on transparency, Shannon Casey, having transparency. And, looking at with fresh eyes, and of course you just looked at it with fresh eyes, we can't find the vision, we can't find the mission. And then we've got League 2.0, but then we've got the superintendent goals. If there's I think providing clarity for the community would be super helpful, because, we talk about, with the math and the reading and, all the academic things that we need to focus on that are priorities. But how it filters, so it starts with the vision, then it goes to the mission, then it goes to the League 2.0, and then it goes to superintendent goals. How do those align?
Mm-hmm.
So providing some clarity on that, just now that I'm thinking about all the pieces that go into what we're working on.
And how do we deliver it to parents and community
Right.
in a format that they understand and speaks to them? Because we're sitting here with all the different lingo and all the acronyms and synonyms, and we understand, I mean the staff and so forth understand it because we deal with it, not us as a board on a daily basis, but on weekly. And parents deal with it on daily, from get the kid to school, get them to this practice, make sure they have their lunch, or they miss the bus, or are they rested for their test, whatever it may be, or am I gonna be at their donuts with dads and muffins with moms, or whatever. So how do we communicate that in a format that reaches the target market it's supposed to, and that it's in terms and in a format they understand? And I think at a district our size, with so many opportunities and information and extracurricular activities and programs, it's difficult, and we've not been successful at it. And even for that, even for the parents, because I know one of the other things is from that communication piece is, we made it a board, like we challenged ourselves internally several years ago, and we redid our website, 4 years ago, maybe? And it got better, but it was not great. It's cumbersome. And as you know, everybody goes to a website, and if it wasn't for that little hourglass or icon up the top, magnifying glass, it'd be tough to find a lot of stuff. So.
And my example with that would be that when some STAR scores were reported locally, people got incensed. They were like, what do you mean people are failing math? I mean, we had all these people failing algebra, right? And what is that reflective of? Now, again, they took it in, 2021? So, I mean, it was after, whatever. Anyway, but then I say, hey, but these are the goals we're working on, and here's how we're measuring them. And I responded back to constituents who are worried about that. They go, oh, well, we just thought you weren't working on them because they weren't someplace. I'm like, of course we're working on them.
Well,
But
and to that point, oh my gosh, the communication on that, right? So this whole, oh my God, they're failing algebra.
yeah.
The district students are not failing algebra. A subset of a group of students that did not take, so we have really
changed our math opportunities and models here so that the majority of kids take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. That's essentially on track now for a student in GCISD. And we had a handful of students at both of the two traditional high schools that took Algebra 1 in 9th grade. So they're not on the accelerated track. And unfortunately, they were caught in that COVID year. And those are the students, for very obvious reasons, did not do well on that Algebra 1 STAR test. And so somehow, because we failed horribly at even communicating that in the first place, it's somehow been transcribed to mean the school district is failing at math, when in fact it's a subset of about 200 students who, number one, were not in the accelerated track to begin with, and number two, were caught up in a special year. And then number three, you know this as well as any of us, we all were under not only a moral obligation, and I sound like my Laura, to make sure those kids.
I won't tell him you said
Yeah,
that.
right.
Ruined your
A moral
reputation.
obligation to take care of those kids, but, you know, there was also legislation, right? And so, of course, we were going to do things to meet the needs of those students. And we failed miserably at the communication about getting ahead of things that we know are gonna be a hot button in the community, that we know are going to touch a nerve in the community. And then when the conversation does get away from us, we have zero plan to be able to try to get that back. I think our communication with large segments of our community are off the mark and failing miserably. When people are way too quick to believe something like that, then that is a huge, giant screaming indication that we are dropping the ball in our communication. So,
And you get it and I get it, and Shannon gets it, but I think that sounds a little bit like we're coming up with an excuse, and I think the approach that we made, I guess we could have communicated better, but the approach that we went was, we're gonna fix it. And that's what the community wants to hear, is that, I hear you,
but where do they even find that message?
well, right, but what I got was, we're working on it. Now, that you're right, I had to call 100 people and tell them, this is what we're doing. So we've got a class in high school, and they're going every day, and we've got tutors out the kazoo, and they're all.
And we've all
taking the test
identified
in
these
December.
kids, right? These aren't just a number on a STAR test.
But I think that, yeah, so it does come back to communication, but again, talking about transparency and how these things all align, I think that, you know, from a newcomer's eyes, I can see, and I mean, you know, even Lisa, who's been here forever, saw that we don't have these things out someplace publicly where we can be transparent and organized and look organized in our thoughts and our objectives, be it vision, mission, Lead 2.0, superintendent goals, how those all sync up.
So I've got several pins pushed in things over here. I'm gonna circle back to several things that have been said. Any other input on this? How League 2.0 is holding up and actually really guiding the board individually and holistically?
I'm just gonna say this because I think it's a vital piece to this, but, you know, the barrier aspect, is it's comical because in a district that's supposedly breaking down barriers, our barriers have barriers. Because we label and we define, and we do all these things that literally we build more barriers than we actually break down. So,
I don't understand what that, could you clarify that a little bit?
well, so again, you know, we like to use the word inclusive, and so everybody, we want to be inclusive, but yet my viewpoint's not welcomed. I've been in all these schools, we've got, you know, LGBTQ stuff, all over the place, inclusive. So what if that's not who you are? Are you inclusive for that person? We've started becoming to where we have to identify in all these different ways that's not inclusive. That's actually not even breaking down barriers, it's creating barriers. So really, you would have a sign on a classroom door that says, "You're all welcome and I can't wait to see you." I mean, that's breaking down barriers. That's actually welcoming everyone that's in there.
So can I ask for clarification on one thing? I want to continue this discussion because that's on the agenda, was to move into exactly what you're talking about, so it's a perfect segue. You made the statement that your viewpoint is not welcome. Were you speaking, you as a board member, your viewpoint is not welcome? Or
Well, I mean, I'm
like as
speaking
a student,
broadly.
as a student thinking, I'm in this classroom and my viewpoint is not welcome?
Right, yeah,
Okay.
broadly.
So you think both yours, the community, and students, if it differs from what we think, or what the board's goals think, that you're not heard? Is that what you think the community feels? You feel, the students feel?
No, I'm saying broadly, like barriers, like you've got kids, that's all we're doing is defining them. That's all that's happening. We're just defining people.
And when you say we're defining them, who, is it society? Is it leadership? Is it teachers? Who's defining them?
All of those, I would say all of the above.
So how do we go about,
Removing those barriers.
yeah, I mean, that was.
If that's what we're talking about, we're
Yeah,
gonna
how do
remove,
we go about,
if those are barriers,
If
then how do we?
they're able to define who they are, how is that a barrier? If they are part of the LGBT and there is a place for them, or if they are part of Student Standing Strong, there is a place for them. We're
Clubs and
allowing.
groups, there's nothing wrong with that. You wanna have clubs and groups, that's great.
I'm asking this, I'm trying to understand.
Athletics, band, all the things, being different, having different groups, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying is when you're promoting, Black Lives Matter, for example, if you're promoting, certain ideologies that, well, then you're not being inclusive to all. You're promoting certain things. So, for example, when, I refer to the third floor of Colleyville Heritage as the LGBTQ indoctrination hall. When you had the entire hall with 5 different flags and must-read books and what they are and all of that stuff, is that really breaking down barriers if you're a student walking down that hall, or is it creating them? I would say it's building a barrier.
So do you, okay, with that specific example, do you think that, that the attempt, I just wanna make sure I'm hearing you right, and we can have an open conversation. Do you think there was an attempt to try to break down barriers for LGBT students that then resulted in additional barriers being placed for other students? Or
Well, I
the
was
barriers were-
contacted by teachers and students that were uncomfortable,
Okay,
so I would say yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So the attempt to remove a barrier for one group created barriers for another?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
So the reason I wanted to talk about this is because one of your 4 areas talks about social emotional learning. And I'm curious where you as a district are on diversity, equity, and inclusion, because this is all kind of one in community-wide, this is all part of kind of one big conversation, right? And these are some of the I don't want to say code phrases, but some of the things that are hot topics in our communities. And I suspect if your community is anything like mine, that you are having these conversations with your constituents, and they're certainly having them with each other, right? So I've lost count of the number of times that the concept of removing barriers, creating opportunities has come up. So what does that look like in GCISD? What does it mean to remove a barrier? And what happens when the attempt to remove a barrier for one group actually creates an illusion of new barriers for another group.
So, I can go back to the League 2.0 committee, and I can talk about what was the thought process behind the word barrier. And I can back up a little bit more. I think League 2021 has been very successful for our community for a lot of kids. And a lot of different personalized programs have been developed, and a lot of things have happened for kids. And League 2.0 is like whenever you update your phone and the software on your phone, you don't throw out everything with the phone, you just try to fine tune the things that are happening on your phone. Same kind of thing. So we didn't do away with League 2021. We're just trying to find the things where we were deficit and try to pick them up. So things like dyslexia is a barrier for learning. Reading is a barrier for learning. Reading comprehension, if you're not on grade level about third grade, then there are all kinds of statistics later on that aren't good. Algebra by eighth grade is a barrier, or mathematics computation or a competency is a barrier. A lot of times vision is a barrier, and there are a lot of kids that aren't doing well in school, and then when you get them tested for eyes, get their eyes tested, then they can all of a sudden, they didn't know, it's crazy, but a lot of times you just don't know. So those are the kinds of things, a lot of times poverty is a barrier. Experiences, all of us have different experiences in our homes, and when we come to school, they're all kind of got to be the same, and so sometimes that's a barrier. So those are the kinds of things that were in the mind of the committee, and Lou, you may have something else, but that's what was in the mind of the committee whenever we were talking about barriers. And then I'll say one thing about a word that you said. You said emotional, social and emotional learning, and we were real careful to avoid that term.
Social and emotional well-being.
Well-being.
Right, you're absolutely right. Thank you.
Because we heard from juniors and seniors on the committee that, they're kind of an emotional wreck because of all of the GPA pressure that is there, or the AP class pressure that is there. And we heard from middle school kids about different kinds of pressures that they had. And so we were real careful to talk about social and emotional well-being, because that's really what we're concerned about, making sure that kids have the coping skills and that teachers are helping them with the coping skills to be able to kind of make it through in what's a pretty high-stress environment for a lot of kids. So that's just my 2 cents about the barriers that we were intended, as far as the committee talking about. And then I want to make sure we're pointing out and using the verbiage that the committee really felt was,
yes,
strongly felt was the verbiage used, which is social and emotional well-being.
thank you for the correction. I appreciate that. Did we cut you off, Ms. Braun? Did you have anything else to add to that? I'm really intrigued by this part of the attempt to remove barriers for some people might create, and that hadn't even crossed my mind, so I really appreciate that contribution.
So what would that look like? So student standing strong might be a barrier to
Well,
some
we don't have
kids, or
students standing
FFA.
strong down an entire hallway, and let's read these books, and, let's talk about these things, so it's different, it's not the same. We're not
Okay.
even talking about, it's not even apples to apples. So you're taking one ideology, you're literally, everyone has to embrace whatever that is. And I think it's problematic.
Student Standing Strong has my personal home address and mails me documentation on a
No,
frequent basis.
but I see what Shannon's saying,
And they have my personal home address.
but would they be allowed to have an entire hallway with read the Bible, read the, the book of John, read the, and would they be able to do, are we looking at all of the clubs the same way, or all of the,
Have they asked?
so that's.
Well, and there are special laws about all of that.
There-
So if
there
it's a
is.
student group, you've got one set of things that you can use, and if it's an adult-led group, there's another set, and.
Right.
And I don't know where this falls as far as the specific example, but,
These were teachers that were putting, and I know what billboards you're talking, not billboards,
Yeah.
bulletin
Yeah.
board. There wasn't a billboard out there with that on there, but I know what your bulletin board, I know what you're talking about. I didn't know it was the entire third floor.
Does anybody else see what Ms. Braun is talking about, see areas
So
where?
I mean, I could see, for example, that if an entire hallway was dedicated to students standing strong, that would be very intimidating to our students that are not Christian, for example. That would be very, very much a barrier. So I think it's certainly a worthwhile conversation to have. Are we making sure that things are indeed inclusive? And so, instead of an entire hallway dedicated to one topic, the hallways are dedicated to multiple topics, so that there's multiple voices heard.
And I'm not just picking on students standing strong.
Oh, no,
I mean,
no,
it
no.
could be FFA, it could be Fellowship of,
Sure, I mean,
Christian
we've
Young
got,
Life,
we've got
or whatever,
vegetarian
Spanish
kids,
club.
right?
Right.
In fact, we have Hindu kids. I would I could foresee some students having some struggles if we line the hallway leading into the cafeteria with, here's what your FFA projects were processed into, right? I mean, that would, it is.
We laugh, but it's true.
But
Yeah,
I mean,
I became a vegetarian today, Mom.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me-
my
let me-
wife is plant-based, has been for 3 years.
I wanna try to stitch this together with several other things that have pins in them here, because it's all orbiting around the same thing. So, on the topic of communication, with that specific example that Ms. Braun gave, was that, a district initiative that teachers did because something came down from administration that says it's Gay Pride Month, we want to make sure these students feel acknowledged, so we're gonna do this? Was it something that individual teachers did as part of an English or a social studies unit? Was it something that a club sponsor did? Because to Dr. Ryan's point, there are, if we're talking about classroom curriculum that the students don't have any choice but to sit through, there's a different set of rules as opposed to an extracurricular club that's completely voluntary, right? So, I'm curious as to maybe let's just use this as an example that could be extrapolated to FFA or any of these other things. So, what was the genesis of that coming about? And on the communication piece, how was that discomfort communicated to campus personnel, to individual board members, to district administration? And what did those communication efforts produce? Y'all follow my
So,
question there?
are you asking me that question?
Yeah, I'm asking anybody, based on this same, we'll use your example as
So it was brought to my attention, so again, in our district, and this is, people don't like to hear this part of it, but teachers, parents, students, they don't feel comfortable going to a teacher and complaining about XYZ. People think they're going to be punished, they think that there's gonna be a repercussion for a grade or, whatever. And y'all can say whatever you want, however, but that's not the truth. That is not what I hear. So people are not free to go speak and take it to appropriate people. So that stuff came to me. I forwarded it to Dr. Ryan. He did handle it, meaning he addressed it with the school. It was through a diversity, and you can jump in because you probably know more of the details than me, but it was through the diversity club. It was supposed to get, anything that goes up should get approval. It was sent to get approval, it got missed, so they put it up anyway with no approval, so just ask permission, you know.
Ask forgiveness.
Yeah, forgiveness later. And so that's as far as I know about that, in terms of communication with, because there were people that knew about it and that were upset about it, so how we communicated it past that, I don't know.
And I think you hear from the ones that, I will have to disagree with you that everyone's in the same, feels the same, about being free to talk about what they feel, or having a problem. So I think you hear from the ones that may have had a bad experience or don't feel comfortable, or, but then I think we've all heard also from parents that do feel like they can go speak to a teacher, and then they know that there's a chain of command, and that's a part of our role, is to explain that chain of command to our parents. So not completely disagreeing with you, I'm sure there are parents that feel that, but I think there's just as many parents that feel like there is open communication. There is, a free, the freedom to go speak to a parent or to a teacher. I think it comes all about how that communication takes place.
So again, like in my head, you know, like inappropriate tweets, for example, things that, you know, when teachers are asking kids to follow them on Twitter or following them on, so again, like something like that, if you're uncomfortable with it, I really don't think you go to the teacher with that.
Then you go to the principal.
Right, so that's kind of what I mean,
Yeah.
is that like that little.
Oh, okay.
Right, do you
Them
know
not
what I'm saying? There's
understanding the
certain
chain.
topics that I
Mhm.
think if the teacher is promoting, that you're not gonna feel comfortable addressing.
True.
Yeah.
True. That's where the chain of command comes in, that they could teach, yeah. That our role.
So how does a missed communication between one club and a campus leadership then translate into an indictment of, or a characterization of the district in terms of directives or mission or vision?
Well, cause it stayed up for 2 weeks. It was part of a, scheduled,
So it was up for 2 weeks and you didn't say anything?
no, it was up for 2 days and I said something.
And so I think, again, an unfortunate miscommunication, right? There are 17 campuses, I don't wanna guess how many hallways. And so I think my question here is, how does that then translate to some sort of issue? Because what I'm getting at here is that a campus issue was resolved at the campus level, but that does not mean that it's a part of our strategic plan to have miscommunication, or part of our strategic plan to have any particular agenda or one-sided perspective as the mission or vision of the district. And I guess what I'm getting at here is that I'm concerned that we have tempests in teapots. That there was clearly a communication issue on the campus, and so it was resolved. And I'm not understanding why, I mean, that's how the process is supposed to work. And so I do hear what you're saying on people not feeling comfortable, right? But in between the campus and a trustee are a number of different stopgaps. And maybe this goes back to the communication of, and in a way, this starts at the top with us, right? That it's incumbent on us to remember what our roles are as a trustee, and that when people come to us, that we help guide them as to what the route of communication should be. I mean, that's kind of what you were saying. I mean, we've had trustees in the past that interfered on campuses, and it made things difficult for particularly the campus
Are you
leadership.
insinuating that I interfered on the campus? Is that what you're insinuating?
No, you're not the
Oh.
trustee in
Oh,
question.
okay.
No,
Mom,
you're
before
not.
your time.
I think
Yeah.
she's saying that there was a trustee previously that would have handled it much different than you,
No.
going through the channels of
But,
administration.
and also globally speaking, right? Because this is something that you run into in board training quite frequently, right? Is that respect for the chain of command and the role of a trustee, particularly in a governance perspective. And so, no, that was definitely not directed at you. Because the reason that governance management line is there is to prevent the confusion, particularly at the campus level, and then on up into the administration and central office as to who's in charge. Because then teachers and principals, they don't know who they're reporting to, and it's very, very confusing. And it leads to campuses that aren't well-run, because nobody knows who's exactly in charge. Because the teachers can see, right, that if the principal is not the person that's handling the campus,
Right.
then that's a loss of confidence in the leadership on a campus.
Well, so from my perspective, in terms of the way that I perceive, our district says that nothing negative is happening, right? So they deny, and then, so when it is happening, well, it's just on this small scale. It was just one classroom. Oh, we already dealt with that. We had to remove that from Twitter. Oh, just 100 people saw that. I mean, whatever the excuse is, so they never fully address whatever the items are,
So
whether,
you're saying there's something systemic?
no, I'm saying that we tolerate a lot of things. I think we tolerate a lot, and I think it causes confusion.
So I wanna keep going, but I wanna turn this slightly, okay? The board is responsible for doing things like setting policy. Remember those 5 broad areas we talked about, setting policies and stuff. So you're gonna have policies that address things like student clubs and equity and inclusion and things like that. You have visions and missions and a document that talks about removing barriers to education, right? So my question is, in your case, with the wall on the 3rd floor, with your FFA example, are those unintentional barriers that were created, are those barriers a barrier to students' education? So I think we can all agree if a student doesn't feel welcome, then it's difficult for them to learn. Just like if they're hungry, they can't learn. If they're too hot or too cold, they can't learn. If they're worried about what's going on at home, they can't learn. So you've got this social emotional well-being piece in place, right? So do these additional type of barriers that are unintentionally put up that we're talking about, are they barriers that impede some students' performance in the classroom? Would seeing Elsie hanging as a side of beef affect a kid's ability to learn algebra, right? Does walking down that hallway, making a student feel uncomfortable, does that make them unable, is that a barrier to them learning Texas history?
That's a great question. I think it goes beyond that, though. I think that's where you look at this, how to say it. I can't say that it's going to affect their ability to learn algebra, but it is going to affect their value and their moral. And here we're supposed to, our goal, we have a goal that is social and emotional. their family value is not that. And for that to be plastered down a hallway that I've gotta walk down every day to go to class, that's a problem to me. I mean, if that's not my value and family values, and that's being thrown at me, I do think that's a, could be NP that student from, I wouldn't say from learning, but it impedes and it affects their emotional side. So I do, I
Right,
I
and
do
to
think
add to
that-
that, if you're trying to, teach these students to respect authority and chain of command, you're plastering this stuff, it's probably there from authority figures, so do you trust those authority figures now? Do you trust the chain of command anymore? It adds other kinks.
And what are we teaching if we know that's there? As a student, I know that that's there, that it wasn't supposed to be there. Now I'm learning that I do what I want to and ask for forgiveness later.
Right, or there's only rules for some
Some,
certain
right.
groups,
So I mean,
right?
so it's,
So certain
Right.
groups
It's a
get
big
away
picture.
with things and other groups aren't allowed to do them, right? That's definitely a barrier.
you know,
So
Yeah.
I personally believe, and I would say that there's some research to back this up, that one way that we learn as human beings, that we learn is from our mistakes. Or from the challenges that we face. We may not even consider it a mistake, but from the challenges we face. So let's try to reframe this a little bit. I'm a student who goes through that hallway and it violates my personal family values that I'm being taught at home. And that causes me to be distracted in the classroom and have some other issues, and it's addressing social emotional well-being. But this brings me back to something that Louis said quite a while back about teaching kids to be critical thinkers, right? Is there an opportunity for us as a district to use those types of things, even when they happen accidentally? Nobody intended to offend somebody and to create a barrier, right? But have we created a culture where the teachers can immediately latch onto that, or the campus administration can latch onto that, and use that as a learning opportunity for staff and for students to be critical thinkers, to have a discussion about what do we do when we're in a situation that we can't immediately remove ourselves from, when we're faced with a challenging viewpoint. What happens when we're sitting in a boardroom and we're faced with a challenging viewpoint, right? Are we going to get up and leave a meeting? Or are we going to use this as an opportunity to have critical thinking discussions about how we approach those situations?
but you're talking about an adult versus a child.
Well, I'm talking about both, right? Because I mean, this is team of 8 training, so I want to address it from both perspectives. You're absolutely right. So as adults, is there an opportunity for us to use that to exercise our critical thinking skills? And how do we as a board translate those skills to the campus and to the classroom?
Well, I guess I'd like to, just on that, I'd like to do that and put my value system up there and see, and sure, let's go after and test it. Because again, that's what I'm kind of saying, is that we only present one side of an ideology. We've got one side of an ideology that there's a lot of people that then have to critically think and do all those things that you're saying. And I think it's hindering.
Like, I can only imagine what our Jewish students must feel on occasion, right?
On what way though? That,
Well,
I don't see that, I don't see that.
So, for example, so when I was a preschool teacher, I had a couple of Jewish students in my class, actually. And, when we came up to the time for the Christmas parties, the mom came to me and had a very frank discussion with me about how were we going to handle Christmas parties in the classroom, and how she would prefer that topic be addressed with her students. And so, if, say, for example, you're going into a classroom and there's a display of crosses on the wall because the teacher has a nice collection that they happen to have there, do we ever think, I mean, that's a great point. That's a great point, Shannon. Do we ever actually examine that from a different lens? Again, I have personal experience with it because I had Jewish students in my classroom and actually had conversations about Christmas. And that was an eye-opening experience to me. The county I grew up in, there were no Jewish people there. We were the only Catholic people. My brothers and I were the only Catholics in my entire school. And I cannot tell you how many times it was very, very uncomfortable. I had a lot of uncomfortable experiences in school because I did not share the same religion with the rest of the school. So I can appreciate that, for sure.
I think one of the other things though, that what we can also do when those kind of things come up though, is that empower's right there in our vision. If we're gonna say that's what we're doing, empower's in our vision. Well, let's empower parents to say, okay, I get it, you're upset, so this is what you do, you know, and you get your student on board to help you do it, right? And this is, so, you know, if this is disturbing, here's the chain of command. So, you know, if we're about empowering students, and we can help parent navigate this as well. So, you know, to just as an action item on that, now not to speak to that overarching, you know, barrier, but it is an opportunity to empower parents and students on navigating that system.
So let me ask this question, and it can be rhetorical for you to just contemplate if you want to, or we can go down this rabbit hole. But you know, if we look at the demographic makeup of your community, it is a very diverse community. We've already covered that, right? And your role as a board is to represent community values within your school. So what does that mean for the team of 8 to represent an incredibly diverse community, some of whom their ideals and their beliefs may not align with yours personally, right? I'm sure that there is a contingent of LGBTQ people who identify that way and are allies of that community, right? So there are different races, there are different religions, there are different political perspectives. So what does it mean for a team of 8 to represent the community standards for their school when there is not unanimity as to what that community standard is? Do we have everything goes so that every single perspective is out there, or do we have no perspective so that nobody is offended?
That's a great question because, you know, you have, like as I listened to this and we spent the time on this scenario, if I go back, the piece that I heard was this club did not get approval. Okay, so how does that translate to the district saying it's an ideology? Well, if the district didn't do anything about it and it stayed up there, then by not doing anything, then that can be conceived as approval of it or backing it. So that is one case. Was it right? Was it wrong? Everybody's going to have an opinion on that. We are a very diverse community. We speak 59 languages, okay? I mean, there's a kid I was up at Heritage Elementary School, I think 2 weeks before Christmas maybe. We had a kid that showed up, speaks Russian. Doesn't know how to speak English. Russian, okay? I mean, imagine what that kid's going through. And so, how do we, when I say we, I mean team of 8 and also the administration, and that goes all the way down to even the principal level, is you don't want a censorship. You don't want to be who's the judge and the jury on what can be said and not said. Now granted, I know we have TEA and we have guardrails in terms of what the Texas Education Agency gives us on what can be taught and not taught. And I understand that, and through this whole process I was thinking about like college. Okay, now I know you choose to go to college. and you pay to go to college, and you choose your classes, or you choose to go work, whether that's a vocational or a technical trade, or you go to the military. In any three of those scenarios, college, vocational, trade, or military, you're gonna have a very diverse group of people from all belief systems, all backgrounds, and thought processes. And so I, as Louis Sullins, really don't know how to answer the question in terms of, do we let everything go? Do we censorship? Do we follow TEA and church and state to the T? But then are we falling short of giving the teachers, and are we falling short by not preparing these students to our mission to make them ready for what faces them, whatever the case may be? You know, and that's tough because, I mean, even friends that have the same belief system and we go to church together as Christians, they're in the same small group, we still disagree on a lot of things, even within our own beliefs, you know what I'm saying? Even within the church, or how it should be ran, or small group, or quiet time, etc. And so, and those are people that are my closest people in accountability, but we still disagree on certain things. And so, I think it's tough because, I mean, we're a very diverse community, and so is every community or school district. I mean, you are a representation of everybody in this district, and to remove barriers and it's difficult, and it's going to be painful.
See, I actually think it's easy. I don't think it's hard at all. Because when you're focusing on what you're there to do, which is learn the foundations and to learn how to read, write, science, just do all of the things that are academic, when that is your objective, is to build a foundation so that you can excel. When you're in a workplace, that's not what the walls are lined with. How about positive, motivational things? How about great quotes from people all over the place that inspire you? You don't have to, again, defining that's part of the problem. When you've got high schoolers trying to define themselves, and it's why? Why not go, gosh, you know what, today's great, and I'm gonna go conquer whatever it is I've gotta walk in and do. How about, oh gosh, I'm gonna smile 12 times at people, because that's gonna actually benefit another human being. I mean, there's just so many, yes, that's not focusing on the right things. You're not there to school to walk down the halls to be indoctrinated into other people's viewpoints. I mean, that's not what you're there for.
So who would the quotes be from?
But, well, yeah, and hang
Like the
on.
little kitten hanging on the tree that says, hang in
Hang on,
there.
hang in there.
Right? Could be that one. That's a great one. The best angle was the triangle.
The what?
You know where I learned that one? In Calico Middle School.
What
The
was
best
it?
angle.
The best angle is the triangle.
Oh,
And that stuck with you.
Stuck with me, 6th grade, Calico Middle School.
It's not easy because life is more entailed than just reading, writing, and math and science. We have to deal with relationships. We have to deal with people. We have to deal with, when we sit down on
are you doing that, walking down the wall? I mean, like shuffling down, I mean, that's not how you're
I know,
doing
but,
that.
okay.
And we're a public school.
Hang on.
We tend to forget that we are a public school system that has to educate all kids.
Yeah.
We're not,
And I hear what you're saying, but to your words earlier, it's one hallway. Not to your words earlier, I'm sorry, to Becky's, that it's
Well,
17,
I mean-
that it, what, Casey?
It's just one example, is what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
but-
It's one
but-
example.
Yeah, my point is like to Becky said, is it perfect? Heck no. Do we have mistakes? Yes. Can we do better? Yes. Where did that process fail? And I don't have an answer for that. That would be my question.
Yeah.
And
Why it
like,
fails.
and we're, because it goes back to what I was, said earlier, is goals, measure, goals, track it, measure, and adjust, is where did we fail on that? And if we failed on that one, that was a biggie, I should say, or a hot topic, where are we failing on all the other small ones? What's slipping through the cracks on it? So where's our process breakdown in terms of that approval? That would be,
Somebody
Does
to
that-
get, somebody to.
that's how I'm coming back, like
Where's the
finding the
accountability?
yeah, and how do we
Right.
get back to the solution of it?
So I want to be respectful of your time. I told you we were going to 9, we've only got like 8 minutes left. So I want to give y'all a couple questions that I want you to be thinking about before our next session, and it directly ties in this. So on your vision statement, let's take this conversation. What does it mean to be a global citizen? What do you mean by empowering, inspiring kids to be a global citizen? Because I think that's kind of what.
And are you asking that from each one of our viewpoint, or what we have as a district?
Yes.
Okay. Because we have that defined as a
Right.
district, but then you're wanting us to define it as well in terms of
Yeah,
our.
so I
words.
want you to
Okay.
look at that district definition
Mhm.
and contemplate how this conversation falls into that, and from your personal perspective as a trustee as well. The other thing I want to touch on real quickly, it came out in the earlier conversation, was talking about listening to community. Several of you talked about your role as trustee and listening to the community. We've talked about how you are to represent the voice and the standards and the values of your community. So keeping that in mind, this part of the conversation, you've all pretty much agreed that communication with the community is not good, right? So whose responsibility is it to be communicating? And I'm gonna tell you, there's a couple of different answers to that, because you remember, number 5 on that list of TASB things of the trustee's role is to communicate with the community, right? So it's incumbent on each of you as individual trustees to be communicating. When a constituent reaches out to you with a concern and says, my kid saw this on the 3rd floor of this high school, it's your role as a trustee to communicate that community input to the district, and to be sure that that district response is communicated back to, all right? So I want you to think about that communication with the community from individual trustee role, because you know you speak as one voice, but you're individually talking to individual constituents, right? So be sure that the individual communication you're making is in line with what really happened in the official district. But for my edification, who is responsible for communicating on behalf of the district? Do you have a communications director? Is it the superintendent's assistant?
We have communications director.
Communication
Okay.
director.
Good. Okay, so there's somebody who officially funnels all official communications to the community, right? So y'all need to be sure that what you are communicating to the community when they contact you individually, they call and they say, hey Shannon, I've got this problem at this high school.
We need to understand the chain of command.
Absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. That's team of 8 training wrapped up right there. That's the slide y'all don't want to sit through again. Roles and responsibilities, right? Okay. On those list of 4 priorities, are there any that you have heartburn over? As an individual trustee who's responsible for seeing that they guide the district, as you read those, and I think
You mean the 4 goals?
the 4 goals,
Okay.
right, of 2.0. I think there's, 3 of y'all that have been elected since that passed, right? So you were not part of, maybe you were as a community member or parent, I don't know, but as a trustee, you were not part of that process.
You're talking about the lead 2.04
Yes,
goals, right?
right. So are there any of those that give you heartburn individually that you want to bring up for further discussion district-wide, right? As part of that reimagining and revisiting your vision, mission, and this statement. The specific conversation we were just having, as I look at goal number 2, it says design learning environments that support social and emotional well-being. And on that specific example, I think we could make the point that that was an attempt to address the social and emotional well-being of a particular group of kids, right? But number 3 says create a culture that fosters learning environments that reflect student voice and promote student engagement. So there was at least a subset of students that was their voice and was, because they're part of this diversity club, I think you called it, or something like that. So how do those two goals work in tandem with allowing student voice that may or may not affect the social emotional well-being of another student? Does that make sense? Right, so I can see some opportunities where those two goals might clash a little bit with each other, where if the facilitator of that club decided to dig his or her heels in and say, I was just giving voice to my students and that's one of our goals, and a parent says, well, your student voice affected my child's social emotional well-being. So how, as a group and as a district, do we handle when those two things come into conflict? Does that make sense? Okay, the rest of the questions there, we actually touched on several of them, and I'll come back to a couple of them. Next time we'll talk some specifically about strengths and weaknesses. I was kind of surprised with the setup conversation I had about coming in. When I got to the shared vision, the shared values of the board, when I got the responses back to that, they were remarkably similar. So that was encouraging. I think from what I was kind of gathering, looking at these and the short conversations I had with some of you, and then our conversation tonight, it really does seem to me that everybody sitting in this room has the best interest of the students of GCISD in their heart, right? So now we just have to figure out how do we all move the ship in the same direction to accomplish what is best for the students. So when I come back in February, we'll be talking about some specific leadership principles and how they kind of tie into the board framework, as well as addressing the last couple of these questions. Those of you that answered the needs assessment, there were 2 Likert scale surveys there where you know, on a scale of 1 to 7, how do you feel about this? On a scale of 1 to 5. We'll talk about that a little bit next time. I know some of the wording kind of caused some people a little bit of heartburn, like we're talking about political skill. It's not political skill as in campaigning for an election. It's political skill as in functioning within a body of other citizens, right? The Greek understanding of the body politic, not the American political system. So we'll talk about those a little bit. And I'll tell you though, from looking, the answers were all over the board on that. Like, it's really not gonna do me a whole lot of good to say, well, here's the average of how it came out on these, because there were 1s and there were 7s, you know, on a lot of the answers. So we will talk about a little bit about how those propel you forward though, and understanding how you operate and what to do when that's different than how somebody else operates. So, you know, a question like, you know, I feel like we're part of a team or something like that, right? So if you feel a part of the team and one person doesn't feel a part of the team, how do you function together as a team, right? Last questions or things that people just have to get off their chest before we go home tonight?
Yeah, I do, and it's, you asked a question, and I don't think either we didn't answer it, or maybe that means that everybody's in agreement, but definitely, on a personal note for me, in bringing Scott here, I want to make sure that it looks like we're pretty close to agreeing on the mission and the vision. There might be flip, there may not, but it seems that we're pretty comfortable with that. But these 4 goals, and you asked the question, does anybody has any heartburn about these 4 goals? There's some controversial words like social and emotional well-being, removing barriers. I just want to make sure that the 7 of us and the 8 of us are okay with these 4 goals, because these are driving what we do. And if we have an issue, this is the time to, maybe not now because it's 9 o'clock, but this is the time to discuss it. And specifically, you made a comment on what happened at Clovelly High School, and then, you know, you talk about barriers, and we had this goal 1 actively identify removing barriers that limit access to an opportunity for learning. I just want to make sure that we are all in agreement that these are the 4 goals that we're going to be going for. And people say nothing, we're gonna assume that we're all in agreement, but if you have an issue, either you say it now, and we can discuss it, or we can come back, in February and discuss it, because this is really important. I mean, this is what guides what we do, so.
I thought that's what you had asked, that in February, for us to really think about these and
Right.
think, and in
Yes.
February talk about if any of them
Absolutely,
give
yeah.
us art.
Yeah, I want y'all to be thinking about, really dig deep and do the self-reflection and the soul searching that we talked about, and say, as a trustee of GCISD, am I 100% sold in on this vision and this mission and these 4 priorities of League 2.0? Because if you're not, you're never gonna row in the same direction. And you're gonna continue to have tension and not be able to operate efficiently and effectively. Especially since you're doing such a good job of using those to guide your board agendas, right? I have a couple of questions. They're about superintendent evaluation. I can call or email
Let's
those.
don't do them.
Breaking the law. Hire
Our
and
next meeting,
evaluate
I think, here in
superintendent.
about a
Yeah.
week.
So, no,
Just ask
and so
next.
my question around that is, how often do you do them? Is it just once a year and we reflect on the whole year? Do you look at it twice, 4 times, 6
Twice.
times a year? So you can make adjustments and course corrections as you go? And are those superintendent goals directly tied to these 4 leads?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
fabulous, okay.
Twice a year directly.
It is my practice as a trustee, when somebody comes before us for public comment, if it is very clear to me that they did not adequately communicate everything that they needed to in that setting, those 3 minutes were not enough for them, or 2 minutes depending on the night,
It's like a 30 seconds.
I call or email them and offer to meet with them so that they can finish communicating to me what they didn't get out in those 2 or 3 minutes, so that their voice is adequately heard. I
Are you the
wanna-
board president?
I'm not the board president. So I meet with, because individual board members can meet with constituents individually.
Sure,
That's
I
right.
agree.
You can't communicate, say, oh, well, we are going to do this as a board,
Right.
right? But you can say, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Constituent, for bringing that. I think I'm gonna ask that that be placed on the agenda for discussion, or I would like to help facilitate a meeting between you and the assistant superintendent that's in charge of that, whatever the case may be, to help them get to whatever they need, the resolution we need to get to as a district. So I'm gonna offer that to all of you tonight. If there's something, I know we kind of ran out of time, I wish we could have discussed, but I think it was a very fruitful discussion. From my part, at least being able to come back with some ideas for the next meeting. So I'm gonna give each one of you my card. It has my office number and my email on it. If there's something that's just burning for you that you want to communicate to me, you didn't have time, I cut you off, somebody else cut you off, there was one of these questions that we just, hey, I really wanted to have my voice heard on that, please reach out to me. I'm not billing by the hour, so just call me, email me, I'm getting paid by the trip, that's it. So if you need to communicate something else with me, I've got my office number and my email here, and I'll be glad to hear your input so that what we discuss next time is meaningful to you as a body, and everybody has their opportunity for adequate input.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. President.
thank you.
We need to adjourn.
Oh,
Okay, so,
I accept,
Wait.
I accept your recommendation.
Second.
let's get like a vote in
I
favor.
love that he just said,
Oh. 7-0, meeting adjourned, 9:05.